co-host, Mr. GLYNE Murray. GLYNE, are you hearing me all right?
I'm hearing you loud and clear, and I particularly appreciated the warm greeting because today was an absolutely gorgeous, warm day, and
It
I really
was.
appreciate it was. So we got to be grateful for that.
It was marked by some things, but we have to keep praying that it will continue to be. This time of year, the sun is always so bright, and there's a special feel to the atmosphere starting around Christmas. I think as we start to go into what we call the dry season, and the days start to
Yeah,
lengthen. And
yeah.
I am really happy to see you here. I'm going to turn on my tablet because in that way I can monitor the show and identify who is with us and so on. Because of course we know I can almost anticipate who I will see when I look. I know who our regulars are, and so until I find them and pull it up. I want to say to our fans, our listeners, our viewers, because some people listen, some people, well, mostly people view the show. But what I want to say is that this evening we have a very special show. Our special guest coming in about 8 o'clock would be the leader of the opposition, Mr. Ralph Thorne, QC MP, and I'm sure he has a lot to say. I also want to thank GLYNE for this evening's theme. And the theme this evening is every house is not a home, every neighborhood is not a community. And as we live and go through, let me turn this volume down. You don't want to hear me echoing in the background. As we go through that, you would understand the significance. But before I do that, GLYNE, and before we go to the national anthem in a couple minutes, I want to welcome the first of member of the opposition. I see Michael Jilts. You were with us even before it was 6 o'clock. Yeah, minutes to 6 o'clock. Judy Jilts, you followed him up. And good evening, you're saying to everybody. Lady Bim, Jacqueline, Aline, Kamhar, Beverly Prescott, good night. Sir Alfred Benjamin, you came in at 9:01, followed by Loyal Daughter 66 at the same time. Nigel Newton is a regular, and good night to you on behalf of Mr. Marie and myself. And of course, Annette Barbados, Vic B. Uh, so you're saying, can we please, Vic B is saying good evening, loyal opposition. And I will read your comment in full because it is something that is certainly for me, and we can hear from GLYNE in a minute, his reaction. What we're hearing, these deaths, I mean, we're not 2 weeks into the country is not 2 weeks into the new year. As you say, good evening, loyal opposition. Can we please stop the shootings in Barbados? It sounds terrible in Canada. It feels terrible in Barbados. It is draining. But GLYNE, before we go to the national anthem, you're my co-host, so we need to hear from you.
Thank you very much. Before we proceed further, I'd like to tell the members of the loyal opposition, all viewers and listeners, that apologize for the absence of Sandy Field Kellerman, who had been scheduled to be on the show, but unfortunately had been under the weather today. But she assured me tonight that she's feeling very much better and that she'll be available for the very next opportunity to talk on the subject. So sorry we'll miss you, Sandy, but we look forward to your presentation at some time.
Yes.
I'm likening the murders, the frequency, the regularity which they're occurring. I am comparing them in mind to the brush fires in the wildfires in California, where it seems to be out of your hand.
It is, and it's out of control. And I mean, it is, we use the word existential threat in the case of California because they have not seen anything like this. And for me,
we have not seen everything like this either.
Precisely.
Those are the parallels.
Yeah, precisely. I mean, I don't know how best to describe how this makes me feel, because it is not, and I wouldn't even use it. It's not a sense of deja vu. It is just a sense of trepidation, upset, disgust. I refuse to be fearful. Let me put it that way. But it is frightening for many people because Barbados is small. We are all touched by this you know, in some way or the other. And I think that we
What I'm
really,
finding what I'm finding strange, that there's no official voice. We have not heard a word from the Attorney General. The Commissioner of Police has been quietly, surprisingly silent. So we're just left to speculate and think and hope and fear. I think we need an authoritative voice to come to the country. Not even the Prime Minister, but the people who are functioning daily. The Attorney General, the Commissioner of Police, and give the public assurance that they have things in hand, and that while we are how justifiably can be concerned, we have no need to panic or to be overwrought by the emotional situation. But it is quite disconcerting. I've never lived in like this in my entire life.
but I must say hi to Easy D and Zaire, Zaire Campbell. Good evening to you. And Glyne, before we go to the national anthem, you see, it is the murders, but it is also the other kinds of crime. I live in the Oxnard Heights area. This time of the year, we go to the people like me who go to the beach on an ongoing basis often cannot go. In fact, if it were easy for me to show you, because I would have to go through the whole thing, and I don't want to interfere with anything. Marcia, we promised Marcia we will have this show and we will have a good show. But anybody who saw Brandon Beach today, just to show you how bad it was, the water park structure that is out to sea was on the shore today. You know, that was on the shore today. And why I raise that is because when the sea is rough at this time of the year, I tend to walk in my neighborhood. But after all that I heard last week, I am hesitant to do that. And this is unfortunate, but we will come back to that. So if we can, and let me say thank you very much up front to Janine. Janine is ensuring that we are that this show is possible. I don't like to use the expression Janine needs no introduction, but let me put it positively. I speak positively. Janine is very much part of this show, and she is making sure that in the absence of Marcia and Dave, the show will go on, and that on the technical end, we will have the usual production. So we're going to pause for the national anthem, and then we will come back and we will start the show rolling, because there's a lot that is happening that we need to talk about, and that we would want to hear from you as you pose your questions. As I can't take calls, but we will, Glyne and I will certainly field your questions. And as I said before, we will have the leader of the opposition, Mr. Ralph Thorne, with us this evening. And we will now recognize the importance of our status as a small but very powerful country by taking and hearing the national anthem. And those of you who will not be heard can sing. I will not sing. I'm not sure that Glyne will try that either, but we will very much be part of the process of starting the evening with the national anthem. Well, thank you very much. And as I was listening to the anthem, my mind always works. And I'm glad you may be able to help me on this. I was trying to find a proper title for Janine Butcher, and I thought I would describe her as producer for the evening of the show because she's dealing with things technical. So I suppose we can do that.
I would add to that, producer and technical guru.
Direct, that too, because she
Because
knows
I'm
these
hopeless at
things.
it. So, but I'd like to say that the important thing about it is that this is all part of a plan of the show, especially Marcy and Dave, to prepare some youngsters to maintain a continuity and to bring blood people and bring them into the system, let them learn the skills which are very important for the show.
And
So I want
that
to
is
commend them for their foresight and the acting
exactly.
doing that.
And I think that is the approach that from the time I met Dave and Marcia, that is how they have been working. They always involve young people. And I think especially within in the technical elements of this, I know they are filmmakers and I know that they've used a lot of young people in editing and those kind of things. So Janine, I want to tell you that the opportunity that you have here, seize it with both arms. And I think what you should do is go the next step and learn some of the critical elements of filmmaking from Marcia. But as I was saying that, GLYNE, let me just look at some comments here because there are a couple of them. GLYNE Mimat 2017 asked if you want them to lie. They do not have it in hand. Where is the gun control or gun amnesty? The other one that I wanted you to look at was Cam Harris saying Mia Motley must, in capital letters, take responsibility for the state of our country. She demands credit for everything else. Um, Loyal Daughter 66 is sharing what I find is a major concern. And this is something that many people raise. As she said, this happened today right in my backyard, so to speak. And my concern is this suppose a bullet or bullet struck the gas tank. And that was something that other persons raised with me. We in the early days of cell phones were told we shouldn't be using our cell phones at gas stations. I mean, people do know in terms of getting points or whatever, but I still observe that thing. I don't use my cell phone. There is a comment here from Marcia, which I think GLYNE, I will raise with you, and then I would hand it you over once you address that. We will talk a little bit about the theme, and in fact, I will let you then go into the theme and start the discussion. And Marcia is saying, with all due respect, Mr. Murray, who would you suggest as an authoritative voice to address what's going on in our nation? So over to you, and then you can start to tell us about the theme and your early contributions for the program this evening.
Yeah, my choice of authoritative voices will have to come from those who have the legal authority, legitimacy, and are paid the money to do the job. They are supposed to be the pros, the experts. They are the ones who have to prepare and present plans and operations. While the public have a role to play in supplementing and guiding, informing, etc., I still think that the job is theirs. They asked for it, they canvassed for it, they did all things possible to get it, and therefore they have to live up to their responsibility. All other leaders and administrators have had problems in the past. They've had to face them and live it with them. So there's no copping out, do the job, which is expected of you. But I think what is most noticeable about this spate of shootings, etc., is that it's not only, you have to understand that in modern crime, the gun is regarded a tool of trade, right? Just like how a teacher would have a piece of chalk or lawyer may have a pen, a
Right.
gun is part of the tool of trade. So that is given. But what is happening, the indiscriminate, callous, insensitive, don't care, whatless nature in which they go about shooting at people. They're not trying to select, they're just, and that tells you how the whole nature of crime in Barbados has changed over there. So we are dealing with a totally different animal than before. And sometime later I will tell you what I think we need to do to upgrade ourselves to deal with the new crime style. But my topic, like I said, is every house not a home, every neighborhood not a community. And I deliberately chose that because apart from the misuse of the term entrepreneur in Barbados, where every net seller, everybody who's doing anything in business is an entrepreneur. I think they've abused the term, misused it, it's lost its impact and focus. The same thing, probably only more abused these days than that would be that of community. And you heard, especially in the attempt to promote regathering, in which Barbadians are encouraged to connect with their community, in which
Mm-hmm.
Barbadians in the diaspora are urged to come back to connect with the community. So this community talk is a buzzword, is a slogan, is an advertising gimmick to get people, because community evokes a certain nostalgia, a certain wistfulness for the past. And nostalgia sells very big in the world today. That's why people like Rolling Stones are still touring. That's why all the well-established stars that can still put on shows that draw hundreds of thousands of people to them, because of, those who would have grown up with them and now have the money and the wherewithal support them, and we all wish for the better days, but we cannot. There's often a talk of going back, recreating community, but that is wishful thinking. Community is not, as I will point out later. Surely, community is not. You can't put cement blocks and turn it into communities. It's not artificially imposed. It springs organically from a group setting, a group of people who, determined by their attitude and behavior and values, are a community. Now, there's a distinct difference between a neighborhood is physical and geographical. The neighborhood of Black Rock, for example, all right, by the map, or Spooner's Hill, for example. But because the neighborhood are geographical, they're physical, but they do not when, in the context of sociology, and examine it from a sociological perspective, the neighborhood does not offer the kind of relationships and values and cooperation and feeling that a community is deals with relationships and people, values, how people see themselves, their view of life, etc. So it's a totally different, and it's very human, as against very geographical, very personal in a community. I tell you, they will say I found out what community, and there's a German philosopher, sociologist called Ferdinand Tönnies, Tonnies, and way back in 1887 he wrote on the concept of community and society. His theory, and is widely accepted in sociological circles, that a community, he invented a term called Gemeinschaft, Gemeinschaft, which represents a community of those same close, personal, intimate, where everybody went to school together, grew up, we know each other, each other's house. So that is a whole different arrangement from a neighborhood where you're just together because of where you are, because you have the house. Like for where you live now, it's in George. I live in a neighborhood. I don't live in the community. Because I like most people, you only know somebody by the car number if you're lucky. But there's when we were there were 3 occasions in which I thought we had a community. We had semblance of a community in my neighborhood. Was once when we were debushing an area to create a community park for the young children to play. We came together. Small groups came together to do that. Then the next time was when we had crop over, and a couple of families organized a crop over for 2 years, and lots of people turned up from all over the neighborhood. But only about 6 people who organized it. And after that, we said, now after 2 families, so we can't do it every year because no boys was fishing. So they came ground for an event. That's how you have a neighborhood watch to come together on crime.
I was going to say neighborhood watch is the use of neighborhood, as I listen, neighborhood watch as you define it, but you go ahead. I will come back to that at a point.
Yeah, come together for crime. The final event was when we had been told by some youngsters in the neighborhood, the district, was another word for neighborhood, that they were having a farewell party with somebody. And we said, okay, fine. We were very impressed that they consulted people first, but then it turned out to be a big band, right down music till 4:30 in the morning. The walls rocking. You saw the cups, the garbage, the condoms. It was a mess. Mm-hmm. So then there was another rumor of war coming up. And when we got wind of it, we got together as a group and approached the police and we got shut down, so we never allowed the second one. But that was the last time that we caught together on any issue. All right. So I'm saying a neighborhood is that kind of transactional arrangement for an event, but there's no continuing, ongoing relationship. As against, so and Thorne's theory is that when you move from neighborhood to society, you become very impersonal. And the difference I learned, like, when it was in Barbados, you walk around Broad Street, you go anywhere, good morning, you speak to everybody virtually you saw. Hi, good morning. But then when I went to live in Toronto, and I checked it out, and they said you couldn't. There's so many people on the street, you go crazy saying hello to everybody. So it's not that they're ill-mannered, it's impractical to only speak to those people you really know or who you have to interact with, but because of the numbers. So there's a difference then between what you do in the community or what you do in the society or neighborhood. So that is the context in which I am dealing. And neighborhoods, societies, therefore, are people. You would have known who you were. You would have had your neighbors backward or forward, Maxine. You would have known them. You've shared a lot of experiences with your friends. So you have an ongoing relationship. And let me tell you what I mean. People that I know from Spoonersville, if I don't see them for 20 years, if I run into them, we reconnect as though we'd seen yesterday. There's no hesitation. You just reconnect and move on as though you've been talking to the last 20 years.
Or if you meet a next generation, a younger generation person, you could say, oh, your mother or your father or your aunt and your uncle, we used to play rounders together. We went to Sunday school together. And that's it. It's an interesting thing. I just wanted to share this. About 2 weeks ago, I went to the beach in the morning, and as I was walking, there was a group. They might have been visitors, I believe. There were 2 adults and 4 females, 2 adults and 2 children, 2 young girls. So as they approached me, I said, good morning. Some of them answered. Then the youngest girl said, what's so good about the morning? And I turned and I said, when you get my age, you would understand. And then the mother, I presume that 2 of them looked like the child of, because it was, one white woman and another black woman and 2 black girls. So I figured they were the children of the woman. And, as I said, it sounded like they were visiting. So the mother said, apologize. And then I turned to her and I said, when you get my age, you would understand. But I also said, and this is how we do it in Barbados. Because, and I think this child is probably just repeating something she heard, you know.
But let me give you a more direct illustration of that. Like I said, when I first moved to Canada, you get in an elevator with people. And you say, good morning. And people look at you as though you're weird. They're looking at the ceiling, they look at the numbers. If you're lucky, someone might grant. So in order to adjust to society, you stop doing that. You only speak to those, So you don't get to build a community because of size, the impersonal nature, the transactions, business is commercial. But your community is where you have deep, intimate, long-lasting, forming relationships and remedies. And you cannot recreate it for Barbadians by pushing it into reality to make things fashionable. You are misleading them. You're misleading yourself. If you think that's not by saying reconnect with community, it will happen. It will not. Let me tell you what I mean. I'm very flattered, like I said last time, that in planning for the gathering, they have used a structure I put in place for community independence celebrations, the parish independence committees, right? And they're using that. The parish independence committees were set up to, as the name says, recreate, reflect, portray, celebrate. Each parish is totally different from the other in Barbados. Each has its own persona, its features. All right. So that is the reason why you take that into consideration. And in compiling and planning the community independence celebration, the idea was you encourage the participants in the program to spontaneously of their own will look around them in the community and make things happen that reflect their community rather than telling them what to do in their community. So I'm saying, therefore, to tell people to go to St. Lucia for tree planting. I died when I saw like the major activity, I think, was Wednesday, Thursday, was planting trees at 2 or 3 schools in the city. how do you come from? How you come from New York or London or Toronto, San Francisco if you can't get to see somebody plant a tree when nobody has invited you? What you could have done would be to invite people to come and participate and join and get them involved and make a contribution and make them feel they're part of the event. So this idea of a community is something that you can just recreate by saying so, giving it a name. Go ahead.
Question for you, because I am just visualizing when you say San Francisco and whatever. I pack my bags, I come home, and we gathering, and okay, start with the church service. At least you go. If for those people who might have lived in the environs of the church or anything, you go to church, you'll probably see people. It may bring back memories of because if you were, let's say you were of another denomination, but you went to, like when I was a girl at St. Stephen's, we went on Wednesdays to St. Stephen's Church, so you were familiar with something. But that bringing together people might give you an opportunity to see people. But how do you, from your perspective and from how you just defined community, hearing, if you were either on the planning side, that is the receiving of the Barbadians coming home for this, or on the other side coming home, and they say reconnect with community, what would come to mind in terms of things to do when you got here, or things that would have been organized? What would come to mind?
First of all, they would have known well in advance, months in advance, so that we could plan to come. You just can't turn up and hear about something. You hear about, I think the exciting in St. Lucie, apart from the motorcade, was a tree planting ceremony, a church service, and they would have a karaoke line. No, tell me, what is so nostalgic? What is so community about that? There's obviously no planned, structured, or solid program that people say, okay, I'm living now in London. I would like to go home in June to my parish and like to go to this event that because it's that you can count down, select, because everybody doesn't have unlimited time or money. So you have to be selective in what is important to you, what you like to participate in. That is not happening. I don't know if it will happen in the coming, but I'm saying you're shooting yourself in the foot. You're defeating the purpose, the express purpose, if you do not plan it and structure it properly. You have to remember these things don't happen spontaneously. Some people have to sit down, conceptualize them, implement them, etc. These things have to be made and happen. And what is so troubling is that I don't think the government has learned from the experience of Jamaica or even Ghana when they've had their.
But GLYNE, they don't have to go so far. When I was waiting to come on the show, I had picked up a package of documents. And the reason I say so, because you might remember back in 2010, starting in 2010, we had what we call a biennial diaspora conference, right? And I just pulled up this, and as you were talking, if I could read this quickly, if you don't mind. It is part of an address I did at the open. I think this would have been, let me check, the opening, I think, of the welcome remarks. And this is part of what I said. It says, this year, the BNC, Barbados National, the conference is being held as Barbados celebrates its 50th anniversary of independence or Golden Jubilee. So at a time when we are reflecting on 50 years of nationhood, we are also seeking to strengthen our connection with the diaspora community in order to forge the feeling of unity, of identity, and of purpose among Barbadians everywhere. I believe that we are all in the right place at the right time. And then it went on to say, against the background of embracing the diaspora in this our 50th year as a sovereign nation, we have selected as our theme, one family, one nation, celebrating 50 years of independence, shaping global citizens. And then it went on to talk about highlighting what we were going to do.
We lost some of your
We seem to be having a little challenge there. Let's see what's happening. Janine, can you hear me? Okay, Janine can hear me. Well, what I was saying as we hopefully will get GLYNE back was, as I was listening to GLYNE, it just brought me back to what we were doing under the theme of the last diaspora conference that we had. And as I said, what happened between 2010 and 2018 was that every 2 years we had a diaspora conference, which was intending to do what the Gatherin did. And I must tell you that at the time that we were conceptualizing this, a man from GLYNE is having internet problems, it looks like. What GLYNE you may want to do is go out and maybe come back in. So Janine, if you have, I'll send him a note and tell him to probably exit and come back in. If he can, I would just tell him to do that. And so what we did, there was this guy, he wanted us to pattern it on, he was Irish. And interestingly, the name of the event in Ireland was the Gatherin. Okay, GLYNE, are you hearing us now?
Yeah. We're good. We're good and clear now.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I was really just sharing the difference in approach, because you need to be clear what it is, and you need to have some, what I call events that are of some value or significance. And I don't understand, the tree planting as a signal, what's the word I want?
As a gesture, as a symbol.
One of the main events. Signature, not signature, is the word I was looking for, but
a marquee event, a premier event.
Something like that. I mean, if you did that in among your family or something, but if we came together in my backyard and my sister's grandchild or my brother's grandchild came and said, okay, we can plant a tree in Auntie Margaret or Auntie Maxine's backyard, so that whenever we come back to Barbados in 4 or 5 years, we might be reaping mangoes or something or the other. But it just seemed to have lacked thought. But go ahead, you were,
Yeah. So I'm not very impressed so far, and I'm not very encouraged it's going to get much better. But for example, I noticed we're talking about the diaspora, and all my administrators have paid attention to the diaspora. Remember in the cabinet that I was in, I think in 1997, we set up something called Thorne, the facilitation unit for returning nationals. It was supposed to be a framework, a comprehensive way of bringing all together the arrangements when Barbadians come back home to resettle, etc.
And that still exists. Yeah.
But I understand it's now called the Barbados, not the Barbados Network, it's the Barbados Network Program. That's what it's now called. And it has been moved from a separate unit into, it's now part of consular services. So it's not as specialized and focused as it used to be, for what I understand. Go ahead.
No, I was saying, my recollection, there were a couple of things. A number of Bajans objected to the term returning nationals. They said it made them sound like some group out there. And then there were some of the challenges when I was around in the ministry was that people had to go from Ministry of Finance to whatever. And an attempt was made to centralize things, but not diminish the importance of the unit, because that's what I think, because you wanted to make sure that you retain the quality of service and speed of response and so on. But I can't tell you what's happening now. But part of it was that they had some people sometimes had some challenges, so it was kind of operationally some efficiencies were supposed to have been struck. I mean, and so on. But I don't know where it is at now.
My information is that it hasn't gotten any better. Even some people question, how do you identify with it? It's called a Barbados Network Program. How does that promote? What does network mean? How are you branding a service to the diaspora? Even if you might get sensitive about returning national, at least there was a category of person identified, branded. But when you say
used to use the term Barbadians coming home, because when I spoke to them, but as I said, so because some people objected, that's why I use, but at least they recognize you're talking about a specific
directly to them. Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm saying that that not much has been done. I think it lacks focus, prior thought. I think somebody had an idea. Okay, we started in 2020. It was aborted in 2021 or something like that because of COVID. But all you should have known that there's a resumption. I should have started your planning way back then. Ideas, check with the diaspora. How do you know what you're planning is what they're interested in? What would using this occasion to tackle some of the issues that frustrate them, like you're talking about dealing with customs, dealing with the registry, dealing with lawyers, dealing with banks, insurance company, land surveyors. All those are practical things that you should have a program so that people don't just come to food and faith, but things in their interests, satisfying their desires and correcting the problem that we are notorious for turning people's way when they come back to Barbados. I want to do business. So I'm saying that those then to me would give a better idea of a community than what you're doing now are just a general thing that does not focus. And community, as you know, community has people, its personalities, its characters, its stories, its legends. All that is community. And I would like to see if there were good thought, we should have been able to recreate for every parish. They had enough time. Recreate an event or series of events that therefore build on the uniqueness of St. Andrew as against St. James, St. Peter as against Christ Church, and use your imagination. You're talking about, there's so many creatives in Barbados. Give them a chance to come up organically from their imagination, what reflecting their community. Like for example, when we conceptualize the community independence celebration, when we're the parish ambassadors, male and female, were supposed to represent their community. They were supposed to wear a costume representing something out of some aspect of their community. And what you would do there, you would get we get designers from within the community, wherever possible, to go and conceptualize the model as a St. John person. Then what is unique about St. John? I like to see reflected on the stage and that. So that's what you do, and you encourage and
one of the things, as you were saying, Catherine, you know that up to today, if you go into St. Lucie, you will hear some St. Lucie accents which are very strong. I can carry you to Crab Hill and introduce you to a relative of mine, a cousin of mine, and she still has a distinct, she's in my age group, a distinct St. Lucie accent. So, for example, when you talked about the young people and creatives, you can have something which captured them. I mean, because those would be lost, and I think part of it started to get lost when people came to school into town. You know, I can think of two brothers who was a senior manager in a local enterprise. And I think he went to school and stayed in the north, and today he still has that St. Lucie accent.
But they also used to be, and it still exists to some extent today, from my observation. St. Philip had a distinct accent.
Exactly, and pronounce certain words like I had a friend who, in my first job, she was from St. Philip, and she always used to say welfare department. You know, there was a special pronunciation, and I used to say to her department, and we used to make fun of this thing, you know.
St. Lucie was normally, not normally, they said normally.
Exactly.
I remember associating St. Philip with Bajak. Remember that term, Bajak?
Yes.
So I'm saying, those are nostalgic things you can build on, build stories, plays,
capture them, videos, audios.
Because that is, Maxine, that is how the Americans, the French, the British recreate and reproduce and sustain their culture by putting their peculiar cultural characteristics in song, dance, plays, movies, food, everything to remind, to reinforce. And we are not doing that, and it means then that we are subject to every fad that comes out of North America or Jamaica or Trinidad or whatever, because we are on our side, we're not defending our own cultural identity and metrics. That is what you do. Otherwise, we become just another place. Right. So
I was just gonna say, before I want to put this here to you, we're gonna ask Marcy when she comes back to get some of her young people who do filming to go and gather the accents.
Record them. Just so, like yes. I lament the fact that we don't have any known recordings of the Scrubbers who used to go around the community again and sing at Christmas time. Right? Let us do that. We no longer have short stories and the characters, right, the myths being recreated and reproduced. All those are things that can be used to help cement and illustrate the richness of a country's culture. So I'm saying that community, as though because it's a glib word, it sounds good. It's nostalgia, reminisce about your friends and how you ran about and played games. That is all in the community, but you cannot get back to that. You not return. It's a period. It's through modernization, development. Not only that, your community was made of people who grew up together, born, went to school together. Then when you move out, other people came in. So that the roots of the community are destroyed when the people who formed it disappear. Like in Barbados, you grow up, you have a group of people in a neighborhood, have a community, youngsters go to school, they play, and then they get married or they go abroad. And other people come from St. Lucie, but they don't bring the same approach, outlook, value, memories. So that is where the neighborhood replaces the community because there's not that foundation of personal, intimate knowledge, respect, and manners, and respect the elders of the community, talking about the well-known characters of the community, or personal, the teachers, all those are things that help to build the community, and not just by saying a community is a community. Every community is not just a community in there. It has to have certain features to function as a community.
But I notice here that GLYNE is saying in each parish there should be one general conference with the objective of encouraging Barbadians to return home and invest in the country. No, I wouldn't take it. We don't have all that time because it's interesting how quickly time goes because we're approaching 8 o'clock, the quarter to 8. But I must say to you, GLYNE, though, that, and this is where even and GLYNE, you could tell me what your thoughts are. Even the idea of 12 months, 11 parish, because there are 11 parishes, and then I think December is a general something, if I remember from what I've read.
No, November was the general.
November is the general.
The culmination of independence on 30th of November, so it was the general.
So that's 10 parishes, and then November.
No, the 11 start. Yeah, December. Each parish has a month.
Right. So then November kind of wraps it up for the whichever.
Right. That's right. Right.
But the thing about it is, my question is, how does that? I'd be interested in seeing at the end of the day the numbers of people who came for each month, because the idea of a conference on investment and so on, those are things that were explored in one of the 4 conferences, or more than one. You had Euphoria, where people interacted with young people from the diaspora and so on. We had something called the business of film one year, the business of fashion, so that people came. You had exhibitors and all kinds of things. And it was done around crop over, so that, because when you look at the realities of holidays in North America, for example, in the US, people don't get more than two weeks holiday, and so it is, if you spread it out over the year, some families may have challenges deciding when to come, and but it just seemed to me to be
it is an idea, like most things, like most things in the government, they're not probably thought through. You have that process matters, has to have a structure, an objective, a theme. You want what is your ultimate outcome, and work towards the outcome, not just have it.
And build on what was there before.
Of course, because we're still one country, one nation. Mm-hmm. But I would like to, before we get on to Mr. Thorne, mm-hmm. I like to reflect on the utter embarrassment I felt last week. It's time so long ago. I'm trying to put it on my mind. The national embarrassment over the inability of Barbados to put enough chairs in there.
Oh, Lord, help me.
I never thought Barbados would say.
I like a national embarrassment. I wrote that down.
Of course, it really is. How it's unbelievable that a country should know. Of course, it's excellence in education, right? And we keep just another illustration of the multiple serial missteps and things. No other ministry in the history of Barbados I can recall has repeatedly had so many faults and flaws and misapplication of its role and its performance as this current Ministry of Education. None. And the Minister of Education, to all intents and purposes, is still very much in place. And what was so ironic that on the day when this national embarrassment was happening at the gymnasium, at the Gatherin Gymnasium, the Minister of Education was in the House of Assembly talking about education transformation, right? And then the Deputy Chief Education Officer at the View talking about the St. Joseph School, the Grand Adams School, and its recommissioning, was talking about again education transformation, and saying that the next big step in education transformation is that I think the second year pupils, second year students will have e-books. They'll be issued e-books. So e-books are supposed to symbolize the education transformation. Remember, they started simply as a reform. They spent untold number of much money on promoting education reform. Remember the sleek brochures they brought out and distributed, and the promos. This were not done by GIS, which had to be paid for over the taxpayers' money. And then that, because the public, they did it, they came up with the concepts and then consult the people on their concepts, rather than deal with the people and try to refashion and reshape what the public wanted, and then bring it to them in a coherent, cohesive, structured, based on empirical evidence and scientific applications that could make it work. Now, so all of a sudden, you no longer, I'm wondering how much it costs to produce all that literature, all the paraphernalia. Appointed committees, a couple of members who talked about it. They appointed committees to do education reform, invite a meeting, no agenda, no background material, no briefing notes, no surveys, no research material to talk about education reform. Where do you start? Of which part of it?
A set of bullet points, essentially. But
ridiculous.
Could you probably react? Sorry, go ahead first. And then,
and that having failed, they now jump from reform. I know it was so classic. What was the classic example? As you saw in the newspaper today, the back page. The schools of excellence, the middle school, the middle school and upper school, the junior colleges. The colleges.
These colleges, colleges of excellence, are. Let me see. I got it. I had the paper right here somewhere. But it's colleges of excellence put on hold. You know,
but that was supposed to be the cornerstone of the reform. You know, remember, they abandoned the old colonial elitist school and have college of excellence, and that has now been replaced by transformation.
GLYNE, I like to keep things simple. I remember one of my former public officers in the ministry shared an article with me, and I asked her to resend it to me some time ago, and I must look for it and send it to you. It was an article about complexifiers and simplifiers. And there are these people who seek to complicate things. But before I do that, I want to put a question out there because I want somebody to help me. They talk about ebooks. How are these presented to the students? Do the students have to download these or upload these on their tablets? And the question I asked that, GLYNE, is when we were forced to go to online teaching, and it was revealed that a lot of students didn't have the necessary equipment, how do we guarantee that a student has continuous access to the textbook? Now, with the textbook scheme where you had a physical book, you paid your fee. I think the last I knew it was $75. I don't know what it was. I mean, I think that's what it was when my son was at school. That's years ago now. They paid the money. You had the series of books. You took good care of them, used them, and carried them back. Now, how is this ebook made available to the student? And how do we know, as parents, grandparents, godparents, just concerned citizens, that John Brown and Mary Smith will have access to that ebook throughout the term. So it's Loyal Daughter 66 says ebooks are supposed to be downloaded to the student's device. So first of all, then, does a teacher know for certain that all his or her pupils have been able to download the requisite set of books, and that I'm just trying to figure out how it, you know, the logistics.
What about how do you guarantee that each child has who's going to provide the child? You're no longer giving books. Does the government then provide the child with a device?
Well, this
Which can be damaged or lost or whatever.
You would have to have a device that is preloaded or something with the materials for Form 1, French, Spanish, maths, English, what. And so you see, these things sound, I don't like to use the cliche sounds. These things sound sexy. These things sound avant-garde. These things sound, innovative and all of that. But are they working?
Maxine, I'm hearing rumblings of edutech. I'm hearing rumblings of edutech, right? Which was a baby of the a product of the imagination and management of the present Prime Minister as Minister of Education. I'm hearing rumblings like that, and I'm hearing my first question: who's importing them? Who's bringing them? Who's sourcing them? Who's making the money by bringing them in?
Hey,
right?
My brother. But, Janine, if you can go back to that comment, there was a comment before Loyal. Loyal, the ebook system was meant to begin in school libraries, yet not implemented for many reasons. Now, my question is this. I think I heard, first of all, I would like any of the persons online with us, members of the Loyal Opposition, to tell us if they have children, what is the situation at the school of that child or those children. Secondly, I would like for the officials in the ministry, because from the time I heard this, and I did not remember to raise the question last week because we were dealing with a number of other issues related to education. But my question is, tell us in very simple terms how this system works. What are the arrangements that are in place to ensure that should children have difficulties, that those difficulties can be remedied? So let me step back a little bit. Are these things downloaded to individual tablets? What type of tablet do you need to have to make sure that, and does this apply to all books? For example, a student who is doing CXC, CAPE, physics or chemistry or history or geography, I don't know the subjects, or accounting or principles of business or whatever. How many subjects does this does this apply to? Does it apply to how many year groups, all schools, whatever? Because we hear these fancy things, GLYNE, but you raise some important questions.
But I am put in the context of what's right now. The country is bemoaning the lack of the high rate of illiteracy in Barbados, where people can't read, can't write, can't spell. It's a chronic defect in the educational system. Children no longer can write with a pencil or chalk. So they're online, and those who know about education know that the mental and psychological and creative effort that goes into holding a pencil or chalk and forming a letter is far different from what you do hit a tablet or computer. You're not as involved creatively, psychologically, intellectually as in that part. So when you present, you already talked about your people are not well enough numerate or literate. When you put a tablet in where they can just read, where is the involvement that seeks to correct that? You're only compounding the problem. You're online again. That's another form of online learning.
The question though is in relation to the ebook. I presume, and that's why I say people need to tell me, because you can't assume that anybody knows anything. My assumption is that the text is downloaded and saved so that I should not have to rely on the internet to get it. And so, okay, now Nina 512 is saying the major problem with e-text is that they may only have access for a specific time period versus having hard copies that the students can go over or can pass down. Now, my question is, with the textbook scheme, you had the book for the duration of the academic year. So my assumption therefore is that you have access to the e-text for the duration of that as well. But the question, is that, as I said, is it downloaded and what capacity? Because if it's something that is saved on your system, what capacity do you have to have? Storage capacity do you have to have on your tablet or whatever? So these are the kinds of things. It sounds good, but when you start to get down to the nitty-gritty, GLYNE.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I would say when you get down to nitty-gritty, it is not as easy as it sounds or as straightforward.
Just let me dig a little deeper as I reflect on the situation. I put the responsibility of this confusion in education, especially, straight at the lap of the Prime Minister. Just the second round was given to I was Minister Bradshaw, now Minister Connie. I'm saying that, and I think part of the problem, as with the sparse information I'm planning down for regathering, is that I don't think the Prime Minister does not physically spend enough time in Barbados to marshal these things and make sure that they're done on time and properly and in time. Let me tell you what. I think there's a term I came across. I was thinking about it. It's a term called wanderlust.
Yes,
it's a journal work called wanderlust.
I think Janine can put up a definition for you. Okay,
right.
Good.
Roaming and wandering about. And the author Robert Louis Stevenson, in the book called Travels with a Donkey, says, I quote, "For my part, I travel not to go anywhere, but to go. I travel for travel's sake. The great affair is to travel." And I've never seen, I think the Prime Minister has traveled more by herself on her own than all the other leaders of ours put together. I think you might see, once you travel, you go, you come back, you do it. You leave, you come back, find all kinds of paper and files and issues.
Precisely.
I don't think the Prime Minister does spend enough time in Barbados because a Prime Minister has to manage her staff, which are the ministers and ministries. And that takes time and effort and discipline and application. Like that. If it doesn't happen, you get the result of not even being able to put on an exam properly.
And the thing is that when we look at the current portfolio that has accumulated itself under the aegis of the Prime Minister, the Prime Minister's portfolio, because we know the Prime Ministers over the years have had a fairly complex portfolio, whatever. But every now and again you see something, culture was gone, it comes back, Barbados Water Authority comes under it. So when you start to look at all of those things, it has been the responsibilities have grown significantly, and the absence is corresponding, and so you're correct, because here you are. It is almost contradictory in the sense that when we listen to policy pronouncements and statements generally, there are two things that have characterized this administration. It is highly unlikely, or let me put it the other way. I like to speak, as I said, in positive terms. Almost every occasion that a minister of government speaks, he or she makes reference or multiple references to the Prime Minister's position on this, or the Prime Minister says, or the Prime Minister, there's always reference to the Prime Minister. So that is one. The second thing is that where they speak, and that is not very often, that is where they speak, they do that. But on the other hand, we know that the Prime Minister, since coming to office in 2018, has been the voice on almost every area that assigned to her cabinet colleagues. So, for example, we would see the Prime Minister speaking and she is flanked by the Attorney General, the Minister of Tourism, the Minister of Health, this body, the next body, but they never have a say.
But let me put this in a different context. That habit, these frequent references to the Prime Minister, Mayor Motley in speakers, or the Prime Minister now, unless she's Prime Minister, began during the 2018 campaign. When speakers were told that if you have a 20-minute speech, and what my information, nobody's disputed it, each speaker was supposed to make reference to the Prime Minister 10, 15 times in that speech. So it's part of their program to do that.
So they have been programmed to do that.
So some of them are still that habit. But what is also deficient and one of the weaknesses of this government, and I don't think they understand what they're doing to their own image. Because like you said, they don't speak. People feel they can't speak because they're not accustomed. They don't have the confidence they scale. Most ministers indulge in ritual. You are a minister for 3-4 years, 5 years, and you still talk about we should look at, we must do that. My ministry, they don't say very simply, there is a program, a plan, a policy. We should do this. You're wishing and hoping and speculating. That is not. After 4 years, you should be brimming. 6 years, should be brimming with ideas and policies and programs coming out. Very few of them do that. And what it has done is created in the public's mind that most of them are not up to the task.
But this is the challenge. And as you mentioned the embarrassment. I said to somebody, and I love this expression when you mentioned the exam furniture debacle. It seems as though nothing in the Ministry of Education has been put out there, presented to the public, and executed with success. And I borrow this. As a former university lecturer, I tell people I am aware that I used to have to warn students about plagiarism. So I will acknowledge that this was a statement, an expression used by somebody in a conversation. I say to the person, I have to borrow this. And out of sheer frustration, a citizen of this country was having a conversation with me over the backstory in the newspaper today with this put on hold, of these colleges of excellence. And the person said to me, and I would preface the expression with, from all that we have seen and heard, the Ministry of Education is rudderless. It is drifting. And by extension, based on what you just said in relation to the wanderlust, you apply that definition.
Right.
The country is drifting. I sat down and we're talking education now. And I asked myself, and Janine, and you will signal to us when Mr. Thorne is on, but if you can put up the article, which it says 100 million, I think it's $100 million. I want to say something about that, and we can come back perhaps and in talking to the leader of the opposition, we can probably come back to some education. But one of the things that seems to preoccupy this government, and when you talked about edutech, I remember who was the Minister of Education responsible for edutech. Money seems to be, we hear large numbers, and in this article that I mentioned, what is it? I will pull it up as Janine looks to probably try to pull it up for me. Okay, 100 million plus investment in education. It will cost government in excess of US $50 million to execute its ambitious national education transformation program. Head of the Ministry of Education's Change Management Unit, Dr. Paul Murphy, said there were 5 specific planks upon which the transformation was built. All right, the transformation is going to cost us well over 100 million, inclusive of professional development and capacity building, institutional strengthening, infrastructure, enhancing our regulatory framework, and strengthening the operations of the Ministry of Education. Where in there is anything telling me about teaching? I mean, you said the operations, but to me, problem solving as it relates to students, we're talking upgrade of infrastructure. A lot of money was spent on school buildings when we were talking about edutech. But thanks, Janine. I may come back to that again another time. But I want.
If I mess round off this is saying that it remains not when you hear these big curves being thrown. It reminds me of something I used to hear at cabinet. Minister Billy Miller was very often used to say, referring to the Prime Minister, the then actually the minister, as a minister, Motley, one thing about you don't hesitate to spend $3 million when $300 would do, especially when spend other people's money. That was one of the reminders. So when I hear these terms, and you say it too in the minute, what you're happening in the ministry, you realize they don't hear from the minister. You hear from Dr. Paul Murphy. You hear from the Chief Education Officer, Deputy, all those. So what you are doing is you're not. There's a deliberate policy to protect the image and reputation of the Minister of Education from the criticism of the public. So when Paul Murphy comes to talk about $150 million, who said that? A Ministry of Education, not the minister. So you do not identify the personality of the minister with these problems, these issues, and you shield them from public criticism and attention and then what you do further, you rather than look at the efficiency, rather than looking at of being able to stage a simple exam, what you do, you hire a communications consultant who speaks for the ministry. While you're already paying staff at GIS to do that, who used to do that, and then you go and last time there were problems with the opening of school, what you next say you appoint a manager of stakeholder relation, more money,
money in the pockets of family, friends, and
family, friends of and the fornicators. Don't forget the fornicators.
On that note, and we will probably get a chance maybe to come back to speak to education, because I want to revisit that 100 million. I want to welcome Mr. Ralph Thorne, QC MP, leader of the opposition. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Maxine. Good evening, GLYNE. How are you?
I'm good, sir. Yourself?
I'm well. Happy New Year, since this is my first time, I think, this year on the show.
Well, that is right. And Happy New Year to you.
Thank you.
And I am sure we certainly we are happy to have you. We are trying to do our best to do justice to Marcy's show and maintain the standard. And I think that you might have had a chance to listen to some of what we said. We really, as a country, have a number of weighty matters that concern us, and I believe you, as leader of the opposition, have to focus on all of these things. But one of the things that really is at the pinnacle, I suppose, literally and figuratively, and Judith Ann Clark is welcoming you, Comrade Thorne.
Yes. Hello, Judith.
Monica Ince, and I'm sure many others are happy to have you.
I'm happy to be here too.
In the midst of all that we're discussing in educational reform is what I call at the pinnacle constitutional reform. So GLYNE, I think that for me is one of the issues. But GLYNE, I will let you say something, and then we can ask our leader of the opposition to share some thoughts with us.
All right, thank you very much, Maxine. As I do so conscious of the fact that as an almost Spooner man, as an almost, I know you came from the Grisette side rather than the Grisette side rather than Spooner, so I give him that. But we used to always, when you wish me happy New Year, we used to always say in the Spooner, so when you wish somebody Happy New Year or Merry Christmas, they used to say, the older folks used to say in very elegant, poetic language, likewise the same unto you. And so therefore, I said likewise the same, but in that regard, I know you're a man of words, so you can appreciate the elegance of the language, the quickness of the language. But I thought I've always remembered, and I try to use it and maintain it and give it survivability by repeating for other people to think back. But I really, Constitutional Reform Commission report is concerned. I last week described it as underwhelmed, but haven't had a chance to look at detail that. I managed through the years to get actual physical copies of part of the recommendation, right? And I see one part, I don't know if you've seen them, Mr. Thorne, but one is an AI generated set of recommendations, and they tell you so at the top, artificial intelligence generated. So when I saw that, I said, instinctively said, no wonder you were right when you said you were underwhelmed. I remember, was it Semencia Cox Commission? I remember the Henry report.
Yes.
And there was no artificial intelligence in those days. Those chairpersons and those members of the committee and whoever labored and stored and worked intellectually, put all their being into creating documents out of their own Barbadianness and their own Barbadian sense of right and intellect and whatnot. Now we're an artificial intelligence generating recommendations. Where is the capacity of the commission? That is an organic, natural piece of work to do, and I think, and that therefore to me underlines the fact that this absence is a disappointment in the content, perspective, breadth, whatever. I think it's just a rehash of. I think it represents a lot of intellectual laziness and not a real effort from the commission. I will go into more details at another time, but that is how I would summarize it. And I'm very disappointed and let down in it, in a way that has never been happened with the two previous editions of such a process.
Yes. Thanks, GLYNE. My disappointment begins with the name. I think the name is a misnomer. It is called the Constitutional Reform Commission. And the first point I want to make is that the recommendations constitute themselves not as reform, but revision. They ought to call it the Constitutional Revision Commission. The difference between reform and revision is this. Anytime you are intending to reform a constitution, it means that you intend to make fundamental and substantial changes. Revision pertains to cosmetic stuff. In other words, reform is more fundamental. Reform is more substantive. And if you say that you're reforming a constitution, the public is entitled to expect that it will be of that nature, of the nature of reform. Something, I don't want to use the word revolutionary, but change in substance, because after so many years of independence, your political culture must have changed to the point where your constitution must keep pace with that change. And these proposals, I've read some of them. Honestly, I haven't read all of them, but I agree with Professor Tennyson Joseph. It is cosmetic. GLYNE and MAXINE, it is just a few cosmetic changes done in the nature of revision and not reform. And I want the public to be met with that first assertion that I make, that these changes are in the nature of revision and not in the nature of reform. That's the first disappointment. I'm also disappointed by the process. In 2021, the public of Barbados was told that on the 30th of November, we became a republic. And we became a republic by what I call simple presidentialist amendment. In other words, we repatriated the office of the head of state. Prior to that, the head of state, as we all know in theory and in practice, because we all, as officers of the state, used to pledge allegiance to the Queen in England, now the King in England. By simple amendment to the Constitution, that person, that head of state, was made the president. She ceased to be, Her Excellency ceased to be the Governor General, being the Queen's representative, and became the president. So all the government had to do by simple amendment to the Constitution was to say that the head of state is now Her Excellency, the President of Barbados. So that answers those. I think we should always have honest debate. And that answers those who say that we are not a republic. By that simple amendment, we became a republic. Because a republic is basically a constitution or a state, let me say this, where power is exercised through a representative body, and that representative body would be the parliament, and that's why they're calling it a parliamentary republic. So that is one feature of republicanism, that we become representative, and the other feature is that you become sovereign, because prior to 2021, you could not say that we were sovereign because the Queen was the head of state of Barbados, and all sovereign and state powers became local powers, exercised through Her Excellency the President, exercised through the Cabinet of Barbados, and exercised through the Parliament of Barbados, and exercised through the judiciary. That is where state power lay in those three bodies, but ultimate state power rested with the president. So we did become a republic, except that we became a republic only by that simple amendment to the Constitution. But what happened to the political culture of Barbados? And the political culture is always going to be shaped by the Constitution. The Constitution has not attempted to reshape the political culture of Barbados, because a constitution does two or three basic things. A constitution establishes the institutions of state, and I've just named them: the head of state, the president, Her Excellency exercising ultimate power within the state, and then the three bodies that become in which state power is distributed: the cabinet, which manages the affairs of Barbados on a daily basis, the parliament, which passes the laws, and the judiciary, which interprets laws, adjudicates decisions that come to the court. So that those state powers are divided between three institutions: the executive, or you can call it the cabinet if you wish, that governs Barbados, runs Barbados on a day-to-day basis; the parliament, which passes the laws that apply to Barbados and to which all citizens must remain obedient; and the judiciary, which interprets those laws. Now, in legal theory, those institutions of state, one institution cannot exercise power over another institution. In other words, the cabinet has no supervisory function over the judiciary. It does not. The parliament has no supervisory function over the judiciary. The powers of the judiciary are separate. In the United States of America, we like to say that they are the classical, you call it separation of powers. Power is separated between those three institutions, those three agencies of the state. The reason that power is separated is so that you do not have a monarch who is all powerful. The reason you separate powers is for the avoidance of tyranny. In other words, a prime minister or no agent within the state has all the powers that are distributed between these three arms of the state, between these three bodies of the state. And that's why we use the word separation of powers. It is literally what it says. It is state power separated between these three bodies: the cabinet, the parliament, and the judiciary. Now, I made reference to the United States as a place of classical separation of powers, because the cabinet in the United States, the members of the cabinet are not members of the parliament, which we call Congress, the Senate and the House of Representatives. So that they have classical separation of powers. The members of the cabinet in the United States are not members of the legislature. In Barbados, it is different. The members of the cabinet are members of the legislature, whether it is in the House of Assembly or in the Senate. Except that does not prevent separation of powers from from functioning. Yeah. But the critical institution in this state, which must remain independent, both from the executive, the cabinet, especially, and the parliament, is the court. Anytime a court becomes subject to the influence of the legislature, and indeed, and more dangerously, if it becomes subject to the control of the executive, the cabinet, your state begins to break down. You've lost your separation of powers doctrine. You've lost the protection of the court, because when you go before a judge, you are entitled to feel that you are guaranteed that that judge, that court is independent, impartial, and that you will have a fair hearing. We know that in these countries and in several countries, law has broken down because there have been cases where politicians have exercised influence over the courts, and that is a sacred. I mean, the independence of the courts is so sacred that we must defend it with our very lives. So that is the constitutional arrangement. That is how the Constitution creates this thing, this state called Barbados. And we thought, and we had hope that we would have had not only a Republican Constitution on November 30th, 2021, which we do have by that simple amendment, except that the government has not seen it fit to go farther and create a genuinely Republican Constitution in substance. We are there only in form insofar as Her Excellency the President is now head of state. But we still have the old Constitution. And these so-called reforms, I'm not going to call them reforms because they haven't changed the substance. The political culture remains with these. I call it revision.
Question
Yes,
for you
please.
then, because in looking at that, because and I like how you explain for Barbadians, the average Barbadian, or reminded Barbadians about that, the structure of our political system, as I would call it.
Yes.
What would you have wanted, or what do you think Barbadians would want to see, or we're hoping to see coming out in this, and in looking at that whole issue of, you mentioned a truly Republican Constitution. What are some of the things that might convince Barbadians that we are actually seeking to achieve that level of independence and so on? Because at the end of the day, I think Barbadians are concerned that we had a commission that sat for a long time.
Yes.
And based on what we're hearing, there doesn't seem to be anything of major change. Some people may say, you don't want to be changed, to have radical change. But my whole question is, what is it that people were probably looking for, that you might be looking for, that would reassure us that as we have gone to Republican status, that we are actually looking at a constitution that says to Barbadians and to the world, this is something that strengthens us as we call ourselves a republic?
Excellent question. Maxine, while we don't make much of it, and sometimes we do make much of it, we've been living in the midst of a political crisis since 2018. Barbadians do appreciate that there has been a threat to our democracy by a parliament on two occasions which did not have an opposition, except for what Pastor Joseph Adderley did in 2018 when he crossed the floor and created an opposition of course, they had the event in 2022, and again we were at 30 Love, and yours truly sat in there from 2022 to 2024 for 2 years. And for those, so while Pastor Adderley was around, we did have an opposition. But for 2 years between 2022 and 2024, this country did not have an opposition. And Maxine and GLYNE, I want to suggest to you, that is a crisis. That is not only a constitutional crisis, but it is a political crisis. Because we thought that our political culture guaranteed us that the government would have opposition, not only at the informal levels, but at the level of parliament. And therefore, it did become a political crisis, and not only a legal crisis, but a political crisis. One would have thought that the framers of this so-called new constitution, and it is not new at all, it is merely a revisionist effort. One would have thought that the commission would have directed its mind to an avoidance of a similar crisis having taken place. And I don't want to disrespect my friend Joe by saying that there was no opposition between 18 and 22. There was an opposition between 18 and 22. The only time we did not have an opposition was between 22 and 24. And of course, everyone knows that I crossed in 24. And I hope that I have justified my efforts as an opposition. I hope so. But for that 2-year period, that was a crisis. That was a political and legal crisis. Legal insofar as there are several appointments that the Prime Minister or the government is under the Constitution entitled to make. And those appointments become validated or consummated only when the leader of the opposition gives his concurrence. So for that 2-year period, the Prime Minister of this country had free reign, a free ride in terms of critical appointments of judges, appointments of heads of commissions, and so on, so that was a political crisis. When I crossed the floor, I became more sensitized to that crisis. When people would meet me on the streets and express satisfaction that we now had someone to scrutinize the government. And to be honest with you, Maxine and GLYNE, I sat there for the 2 years. And I'm being honest, the depth of this political crisis really did not strike me until I crossed. When people were saying, well, thanks, we now have somebody to challenge the government. But that's political, but it was also legal. And I would have thought that in this revisionist effort, this commission would have addressed that, because under the present arrangement, if this revisionist constitution becomes law, we are going to fight it. If this becomes law, in theory, the same thing can happen again. If Barbadians vote the way they did in 18 and in 22, this could happen again by some creative thought. This revisionist commission should have addressed that. They could have had some limited or hybrid proportionality. The Guyanese constitution provides for proportional representation. They divide. Parliament is divided along the lines of the total vote, so that if one party gets 60%, the other party 40%, the winning party gets 60% of the seats in the legislature, the losing party gets 40%. That is proportional representation. Now, we have never opted for proportional representation, but what this revisionist commission ought to have done, and they've had 2 examples of it. They've had 2 elections, and they had the opportunity to observe in broad daylight that you could have had 30 love, and they saw it twice. Yet this commission, this revisionist commission, did not address its mind to that, and they ought to have proposed not total proportional representation, but limited, some hybrid situation in which you lose upon the first past the post, I think they call it, except that they could have paused and say, look, the people of Barbados don't want a 30 love. They don't want a 30, hold on there. They don't want a 30 love parliament. We want a parliament. We in Barbados want a parliament that has some opposition representation.
GLYNE, you wanted to say something?
I want to say something. I want to make an observation, then ask a question. Part of my difficulty too with this document presented as recommendations, that the failure of making it easily available to the public for scrutiny and examination themselves. The Prime Minister had said on the 1st of November in Heroes Credit Lighting Ceremony that this report, that of the Parliamentary Reform Committee and one commission dealing with the use of the future of national symbols, would all been circulated during the month of November for public discussion and debate. That has not come, and I think that the public has again been robbed And I think I deprecate that each time the government seeks to rob the public of full information. You have to go online and find it. You have to get downloaded. You have to get a printer. I think it is wrong. It should have been made available to the government pretty at cheap rates so the public can be involved. But that apart, among the recommendations, and you quite incidentally mentioned the role quite strongly of the role of the president as replacement for the governor general. One of the recommendations, which I appreciate the role of the president, particularly if you are dealing with a troubled situation where there's no official opposition, where you said there's a political crisis. It talks on the governments and institutions. It makes certain recommendations, some of which I agree with. It says, retain the president as a non-executive unifying figure. I support that, particularly when.
Could you read that again, please, Glenn?
Retain the president. This is my AI generated recommendation summary, right?
I'll listen to you.
Right. It says it's under governance and institutions.
Mm-hmm.
Under the president's role, it says retain the president as a non-executive unifying figure. Yes. I support that. I think that's important.
Yes. As opposed to executive.
Right. Extend the term of office to 7 years, separate from parliamentary terms, and that means that a point where it was travel, a change of government, change of party, whatever. So the future is not left to a political decision or whatever. Is that my interpretation of it? It's outside the ruling or the curtailment of a parliament thing, because it's straddle terms. But the one I particularly caught my eye, which I'm concerned about, remove the requirement for presidential assent to legislation. Remove the requirement for presidential assent to legislation. I think right now the president has to sign and proclaim documents.
Yes, that's correct. And what is their proposal, that assent should come from who? The speaker, the clerk of the house? Who?
It doesn't matter. Let's remove the requirement for the president assent to legislation. Replace it by what?
You see, that's a safeguard, Glenn. That's a safeguard. You know, a lot of silent safeguards. A lot of silent safeguards seem useless until a crisis arises, and there must have been some good reason why the assent was created. You know, it is a control. It is a check and balance even on the parliament. And why would a commission want to remove the assent? I mean, I don't understand that.
I think it's a dangerous recommendation, because
it is a dangerous recommendation. Yes,
because
you see, Glenn, I'm sorry, the public has not had enough input into this business, and I want to suggest to you the public has not because of indifference. Because if you tell people that they've gone Republic in 2021, and then you come and tell them, okay, we're going to do a constitution, what's the point? What's the point? You've put the cart before the horse. You've gone Republic, and then you come to people in severe economic circumstances, mind you, because I think a lot of the indifference and disinterest is born of people's struggle to survive in this country, and that they don't wish to discuss any constitution at this point because of hardship, because of crime, because of a whole number of things that are making life difficult. So I regret that this constitution is being foisted on Barbadians with very, very little input from an indifferent and perhaps disinterested population. And we in these positions, we in these shows, certainly we as a Democratic Labour Party, we intend to ensure that this constitution is not snuck upon Barbadians, is not foisted upon Barbadians with a lot of what you call dangerous provisions contained in it. And I think that is our responsibility. The people of Barbados must be sensitized, and government must not be able to, a Friday night at midnight, get together and decide they're going to pass this thing a Tuesday. We have to maintain our voices of protest against what this government may well be intending to do. That is to say, foist a revisionist constitution, which is essentially still Westminster. The people of this country have come too far in their political development and their political education to accept a constitution which is similar to a constitution that was written 60 years ago. Everything develops, everything evolves. So it is nothing. We're not promoting or proposing rebellion, GLYNE. All we are saying, give Barbadians a chance to express how they genuinely feel about the workings of the institutions of state. If they don't want to say a constitution, the institutions of state, the relationship with those institutions of state, the state of parliament in a 30-love situations. Give Barbadians a genuine opportunity to say how they feel. We're not getting that opportunity now.
In functional term, I was embarrassed and shocked that a commission of Barbadians who presumably believe in democracy could want to remove that assent provision.
There you are. And you know, GLYNE, if you had not highlighted that tonight.
Just let me finish, please.
Yes.
Because it's a check and balance on the already gigantic power of the Prime Minister.
Precisely.
Who you replace that? So only the Parliament will pass.
There you are.
So to me, it's a horrifying to think that.
It is. It is.
That are you talking about? That is a major change, I would say.
It is major. It is major.
And I think it's one that we should not even be. I'd love to hear them come and justify that recommendation to me. On what grounds?
You know, GLYNE, if you had not highlighted that, most Barbadians would not have known that this is a proposal which possibly increases prime ministerial power, because you were in that parliament and you know the power of a prime minister in a practical way. That the prime minister walks into parliament and the prime minister gets his or her way. You know that. But the constitution ought to speak differently, to limit the powers of a prime minister, whoever is prime minister, so that the prime minister is not allowed to behave like a monarch or like an emperor. And that's the whole point. And I want to thank you for raising that.
You're welcome. But on the other hand, what apart from the general unhappiness with the process and the content and the results, what do you think next should be done with the recommendation? Of which the people already the sparse turnout at the Frank Hall presentation indicates that people voted with their feet. The people have not been energized, they have not been involved, they have been excited, they have not been informed.
You can't even say they should have done it at midday, because the violence is occurring at midday now. You can, and on Sundays, you know. So Barbadians are not in a mood to deal with this because life is too difficult. What the Jamaicans are doing, GLYNE and MAXINE, and what every other country did, was to go to the people with the proposals before you went republic. I mean, this is, look, for me, as a parliamentarian, this is politically and personally embarrassing. The Jamaicans are now proposing to go republic. You know what the Jamaicans are doing? The Jamaicans have a draft constitution which they will take to the people before they go republic. Why is it that Barbadians woke up on the 2nd of November 2021 and were told that we are republic, or the 30th of November, which I beg your pardon, on the 2nd of which month was it? 1st of December 2021, Barbadians woke up and discovered that they had gone republic the day before. You don't do it like that. And I have challenged the government to tell me if any other country has done it like this. I don't think so. And I am willing to admit to being wrong if they can point to one country that changed the constitution and then did consultation afterwards. It simply does not make sense. What was the government's hurry? Nobody knows. But on this night, Mr. GLYNE Murray has to identify weaknesses in the constitution. Well, not weaknesses, points in the constitution which may possibly render to parliament powers that parliament should not have. The absence of an assent. You take away from the head of state, you take away from the former governor general or president, the right to assent to laws. In other words, tell the public what we mean. The right to give approval, final approval to the laws that become the laws of this country, the laws that will govern our behavior, whether it is pink legislation or any kind of legislation which are intended to control our behavior and in some cases suppress our behavior. Why? Why do you take that power away from the head of state? Her Excellency is the head of state and she's called the head of state for a reason. But Parliament takes away the assent and Perhaps they do as they like.
I think, you have touched on something, Ralph, in relation to the process and
Yes.
what Jamaica is contemplating. I listen to all that you've been saying, and I reflect on the general approach to decision making by this government since it has come to office, and I
Yes.
describe it as indisciplined, and because it really says a lot about government
Maxine,
and
why are you
governance.
afraid of the word tyrannical?
Well, no, well, let me use it. Your language skills are better than mine. But no, it's serious. I mean, this is a problem. How can you, by any stretch of the imagination, say to Barbadians, to start with yourself, say to yourself, to Barbadians and the world, that you are making decisions and running this country in a way that characterizes or that is consistent with what we used to stand for as a country post-independence?
Yes.
It is not. It is not. I mean, you're going to come and tell us we have this urgent need to become a republic. As you
Yes.
said, the explanation to that, to my mind, lies in the head of Prime Minister Mia Mottley.
That's right.
Because I would hate to think, you were not a cabinet member, so you get excused. But I would hate to think that a cabinet of this size, the largest cabinet that I can recall in Barbados,
Yes.
would sit and agree to what almost looks like a knee-jerk sudden wake up yesterday or this morning and decide that we're going to do something.
Yes.
And that is okay. Where are the voices of those people who should know better and say no? You have the cart. Somebody used the expression earlier in one of the comments. You have the cart before the horse. How can we tell people, go ahead.
The cart is before the horse. And you raised an interesting point about the size of the cabinet. I have spent the last 6 years in Parliament, 7 now, 18, 25, going on 7 years, hearing on a daily basis Barbadians complain about the size of a cabinet. One, it is too heavy, it is too costly, and it is clear that if you look at a lot of those portfolios, a lot of them overlap. So somebody is sleeping during the day. Somebody is getting the opportunity to get some extra sleep. And the original constitution spoke to the size of a cabinet in terms of its minimum amount. But having regard to the protestations of Barbadians over the last 6-7 years, this revisionist effort ought to have addressed the question of the size of a cabinet. Barbadians are not happy to be paying 26 and 27 ministers, many of whom are duplicating the portfolios of each other, and all of whom are clearly subject to the dictates of a prime minister. And that is the political system that we live in. And that is the political system that ought to have been controlled and reshaped by a new constitution, which would speak to the size of a cabinet, which would tell a prime minister that after an election victory, you cannot go off and choose 27 people to sit around a table on Thursdays and lean on each other and sleep. It should have been limited. And I am absolutely certain that Barbadians are themselves dissatisfied with the size of the cabinet. In fact, this prime minister, while she was in opposition, criticized the past government for having a cabinet that was too big. Maxine, you were probably a part of it.
Well, I was part of that cabinet, and I can tell you that voice, not it's only a voice, no, it is a video. It's very much still in circulation.
Yes. How many of you were there then?
The cabinet
18?
was, I don't think it was 18, but I would have to go. It certainly was almost 10 less.
But Ralph and Maxine, even more ridiculous as that was the attempted rationalization and justification on that. Many hands make light work. And the results have not been
response is too many conspired draft.
And the results have not justified even that.
And you see, what we are here describing and discussing is a political culture.
Okay.
The political culture that this revisionist body had the chance to reshape in a new constitution. And they ought to have been reshaping that political culture according to the wishes of the people, because it is the people that we are serving. It's the people who are protected by the constitution, but the government is supposed to serve the interests and the wishes of the people. And here you have a political culture evolving in which people believe that a cabinet should not be 25, 26, 27 persons. Yet the government through its commission fails, neglects to address that issue of political culture. That's why I say a constitution is also a political document, and it is a document that is intended to shape or reshape the political culture according to the wishes of people. And here it is, these significant facets of our politics remain unaddressed. So you have a government that can continue to trample over the rights of citizens by arbitrary policy. Because right now, we're in a state in which the Prime Minister has such great power that she can name 30 cabinet members tomorrow. Yeah, and the Constitution does not address it. The Constitution ought to be addressing those what appear to be minor aspects of constitutional rule in this country. What appear to be minor are not so minor after all, because Barbadians believe it is an abuse of power. It is an abuse of political power to have 27 persons in a cabinet when the average Barbadian feels that you should not go for 20. Why not? Why could not the Constitution have addressed this? 1966 Constitution spoke, I think, blind to 4 or 5, a minimum of 4 or 5.
I think it's 5. It's 5.
It never contemplated 25. Never did.
And that's the point I was going to make, that there must be a good reason. I know people like to talk about colonial and pre-colonial and pre-independence as though we were all dummies in that era. We were not patriotic. We did not love Barbados. That those people who fashioned the first constitution, did not have a passion for Barbados to be a right and just place. Wrong. There must be a reason why they put in that assent clause.
Yes.
There must be that. They don't have by acts. And now you're having a group of people who are prepared to recommend a remove. But not only that, but it occurred to me that the composition of the commission, I think predicted such an outcome. To me, it was a foregone conclusion that the composition, how the commission was made up, could not produce anything like this. To me, that's really that is because I think there was too much of the status quo, of elitism, of prestige, and because but rather than people who are serious thinkers, radical thinkers, called by radicalism, some is needed sometimes. But it's like all ideas contain, and not put in a bunch of safe hands who will come back and bring somebody. There's a quotation, you probably know this quotation: "This train and produce a gnat." You remember that quotation? I mean, they went through how much money? Any idea how much money this cost?
Well, they had at least double time. That can be easily obtained, I suppose, from should be reflected somewhere in the estimates or the from Parliament. But I want to ask a question, because I think we also want to hear your thoughts on some other issues concerning the country. But having recognized the word tinkering, the revision rather than reform. And so,
yes.
What should be the next step? Because I remember commenting on this on a call-in program recently, because some people were of the opinion that the commission has presented the report, and there is nothing else that citizens could do. My thinking is that shouldn't be the case. What from your perspective, should be the next step, particularly given the kind of major issue that I call it a major issue that GLYNE raised, and the several issues that you have touched on and concerns that you've kind of identified, expressed.
Yes. Government should do what I don't expect they'll do. They should express some regret that the process was mishandled. And they don't have to do that openly. I mean, we don't want the government to face public embarrassment in that way. What the government ought to do.
Why not, Rob?
Because they're not going to do it.
Everybody some Barbados faces it from time to time in their life. Why not the government?
Look, every line or every section of this constitution should be made public. We have two. There's the nation and there's Barbados today. Is GIS still existing?
Barely.
And the government needs to spend some of the money it spends on too large a cabinet and spend it to publicize in the daily newspapers, and perhaps they can do something on radio as well, have somebody reading it, publicize every proposal, every portion of this constitution over the next 6 months at least, so that Barbadians have an idea as to what is in this document, and to invite response, because GLYNE and MAXINE, we have not had genuine consultation. And I think that would be the essence of genuine consultation, to publicize these documents in the daily press, in the popular press every day over the next 6 months.
Let me say the report is 360 pages long. 360 pages long.
However long it takes.
I was saying the government pretty should produce booklets of at least the recommendation. They used to do it. Used to be able to go into the government pretty and get a copy of any law, any document.
I am saying it differently. I am saying that the government must come to the people of this country by way of the popular media, and that is to say, Barbados Today and The Nation, and perhaps every week for the next 6 months, take sections out of that proposed constitution, print them, and ask the public to comment on it. If people are not going to leave home to go and see them at Frank Collymore Hall, take the proposal to the people. Take it to them. Yes, right? Take them to the people. Apologize to the people.
The summary recommendation that I have are only 3 pages long. This is a good 2-page document.
You have it. A lot of people went to the supermarket looking for it and couldn't find it.
But the standard has been to use this at post. So I want to go back to something, Glenn. You're saying that the summary was AI generated. So my difficulty with that, if I understand how this thing works, is that they would have taken the document and used the technology to ask it to generate summary. The challenge with most of these things, and if you read up on AI, it would tell you that they're not necessarily reflective of all the things. So I mean, who then went through? Because to me, there's no substitute for something as serious as this. Precisely of
local creativity, Maxine. Creativity based on our local experience.
And the commissioners the commissioners sat and made decisions. They're the ones that should go through point by point and say, well, I will not preempt the other commission that they had, but it would be interesting to hear from these, I call them the CRC, the Constitutional Reform Commission, to tell us, how did you arrive at those? In other words, you sat and you deliberated. You had recommendations and so on. You pulled from those, you agreed on whatever. Why should we rely on some quote unquote AI generated thing? Are you comfortable that AI generated summary captures fully, not even the essence but captures fully the recommendations that were identified and discussed and agreed to go into that report?
Apart from that, Maxine, you're speaking about the recommendations. I want to take it further. Can AI capture the nuances of the Barbadian political and legal culture?
No,
it cannot.
No, it cannot.
It cannot. So it must go beyond the recommendations of the commissioners, and it must go into the Barbadian political psyche. What is important to us? What is precious to us? What is sacred to us?
Hopefully those things came out in recommendations, and if they didn't, as you said, you discussed that. But I don't know. They had a lot of time.
Can you help me? Were they paid? Were the commissioners paid? Did they get a stipend?
They would have, yes.
And this is what they produced. I will call back for my money, my taxpayer money. I mean, this is an insult. When you surrender your intellect, all those people on that commission, I recall, could be said at school, university level. Are this the best you could produce? Are you subcontracted to AI? Oh.
No, I can, and I will do this. I was going to say I shouldn't, but I will do this. I sat and represented, because prior to the indication that there was going to be a Constitutional Reform Commission, about 4 years before they actually appointed the commission, the Prime Minister had mooted a Parliamentary Reform Commission. and the Democratic Labour Party was asked to submit to nominate somebody to serve. The then President Verla de Pisa asked me to serve, and when it didn't happen, then when they finally did, I was asked by the then President Ronnie Yearwood to serve, and I did. We sat down. In fact, in relation to this, before I go, I just want to highlight this. Pedro Gemma is saying that the CRC, the Constitutional Reform Commission, ignored Verla de Pisa's queries, because I know that the news media carried excerpts of her comments at the meeting that was just held. But we sat down as a commission. I can tell you that when we were finalizing the report, we went through it line by line in terms of looking at whether in terms of wording the recommendations. Now we will see whether they reflected whatever the people want. But the point I'm making is that the commissioners sat down with a screen, right?
I'm putting the mental effort.
Precisely, I went through them
Right.
line by line. And I can tell you that people were there to do that. So I don't understand the time of AI generated something, but
Maxine, I don't want to disrespect your efforts on the Parliamentary Reform Commission, but you ought not to have had two commissions.
No, but I agree.
Parliament, the institution of Parliament is
falls under the umbrella.
Yes, it's a major part of the Constitution. There's a separate part of the Constitution on Parliament. As I said earlier, there's a separate part on the cabinet. There's a separate part on the judiciary.
That was an issue.
Set up a review commission on the judiciary. Your commission ought to have been fused with the Constitutional Reform Commission.
But if you change your mind, you should have just had because that was one of the questions that came up. When you look at Constitution, the Constitution speaks, and that I explained on the same VOB program last week, that the Constitution is all encompassing. You explained it in terms of the branches
yes,
and so on. But that was what was said.
But might I say that the two of you all are ignoring the political culture of Barbados? Part of the patronage of government is give people a pick. and there's far too many Barbadians. There are far too many. There are far too many Barbadians who don't say anything that might offend, draw attention, because they are hoping they don't alienate themselves to get a pick on a commission, on a board, something. And this is all. So people were very proud to be addressed as commissioner this and commissioner that.
Brother Thorne, all I would tell you is that I was asked to represent.
So when you have those kinds of egos and prestige,
you're correct.
So you end up with this. You miss your whole focus, your whole purpose of being there. You're not going there to give anything from the internal beings of being a Barbadian, what you like to see for the. You're going there to enjoy the pay.
Prestige, a prestige ride.
Yeah. So,
you
should not be surprised.
But I'd want to seize this opportunity to say that I headed a commission as well on local governance, and I don't mind saying to the public that one of our proposals was, and yes, Maxine, we met with you in a memorable meeting.
Yes, and we had some differences of opinion.
Yes. One of our proposals, Ms. McLean, will you allow me to say now what I said to you then? One of our proposals had been to make local government a third tier of government within the Constitution. In other words, at the apex of representation in Barbados is the Senate. A lot of people don't know that. They feel that the House of Assembly is at the apex. The apex of representation is the Senate, then the House of Assembly, and we were proposing a third tier of government because the people in this country are important, and we felt that local government should become that third tier, enshrined within the Constitution, so that when the people meet in their community centers and their church halls and decide that the roads need fixing, the lights need repairing, the bus service needs to be better, the garbage truck needs to come more often. These are important issues to Barbadians. They affect health. And we felt that that should become a permanent body within the Constitution, that local government ought to have been embraced by the Constitution. There's nothing inferior about local government. Local government is as important because it deals with the day-to-day affairs of people in their villages, in their communities, in their neighborhoods. And we felt that that should have been embraced by the Constitution. And I want to seize this opportunity to say that a new government should seriously consider the kind of constitutional reform that embraces the institution of local government. In other words, as we lawyers say, broadening down democracy to the level of the community, so that when people meet in their church halls, in their school halls, in their community centers, and make decisions for the proper functioning of their neighborhoods, that could become formalized. And I was told about costs. I was told about costs to the state. Look, I believe that politicians really should be freed of a lot of the things that people can do themselves. You don't need to run behind a politician in 2025 and ask for a light to be changed at a corner. You don't need to do that. So that should be a responsibility left to the people in the communities, except that it is so important that it ought to have protection or recognition or enshrinement within a constitution as a third tier of government. And I think a new government should seriously consider that. Now, that is serious constitutional reform. That is reshaping political culture, GLYNE.
Yeah.
So that you recognize your institutions at the lowest levels.
I have just reread my AI. No, it starts about here. It does say under governance and institutions, and then under a subsection 3, opposition leadership, it says, quote unquote, address situations where the former leader of the opposition, where no former leader of the opposition exists, by designating the opposition party with the highest votes to fulfill constitutional roles. Address the situations where no former leader of the opposition exists, by designating the opposition party with the highest votes to fulfill constitutional roles. So, in all fairness, that is among the recommendations. The issue of a no, right. So, in all fairness to them, now I've read it carefully.
So, GLYNE, does it propose representation in the parliament?
It just says address situations. That is very address situations. Whatever that means.
Whatever that means. Whatever that means.
Right.
And my suggestion is that there should be some limited form of, not entire, but some limited form of proportional representation where there's a 30 love.
So it is not accurate, therefore,
done that quite easily.
It has not. It would not therefore be fair to say they have not addressed. They have addressed it in a very vague, amorphous, and distinct address situations.
So there wasn't
who is addressing the government? No, they're paid to do this. They're paid to do this. Make the proposal. Have the courage and the self-confidence to make the proposal.
Take a position. Pick a side.
Yes, don't say address it. How do you address it?
But they were supposed to address it by their mandate.
Precisely.
Their mandate was to come up with recommendations. Just to Gilbert Perry, it was Constituency Council. And I think Comrade Grasby, we at some point should have a discussion in local government. Of course, my concern was not the what, but the how. And we could get into that discussion, because what you don't want is to create her. And I was just putting on my hat as a manager. I know you would wear your legal hat, and I put on my management hat. So
we had a grand time that evening.
Can I change gears? Unless anybody has, can we look at the crime situation in Barbados, Mr. Thorne?
Yes, please.
I follow because of my background in sociology. I've always been fascinated by the mafia, right? And how the culture and how they operate. How they impose their culture, how they operate as a group or whatnot. So I pay close attention, and I've done some studies I think on gang. When I worked in Canada, I used to work dealing with things with more secular gangs and whatnot. What is amazing me with the Barbados situation is that there's no attempt to disrupt the situation. First of all, I think we have to admit that we have gangs in Barbados. They're still being addressed as groups. I should be able to know what gangs they're supposed to be in St. George and Thomas for my own protection and where how I travel. And we should know that as public, not just groups. And I know that these people have allowed our approach, having gone into denial about gangs, these groups cooperate with a certain amount of sovereignty, territory, right? And if you do not disrupt that, if you do not disrupt their life, they consolidate positions more and more and become more and more deeply entrenched. I am saying that we have reached a point now, given the callous nature in which the gun violence is being spread around Barbados, that I think we need to see some disruptive action where the police are taking the fight to them, chasing, breaking up the system, water, and make sure that put them on the back foot. Now the system, the citizens, and the police are on the defensive. I don't know what are your views on that, but I think we need more vigorous, meaningful action.
Yes, I have a lot of views on it. Let me begin though by expressing sympathy to the families of the 3 persons who have lost their lives in this manner in the first 12 days of the year. And this morning was particularly traumatic because that is what I call in Barbados the hour of reverence. GLYNE and MAXINE, you know the Barbados we grew up in. Yes. Sundays used to be so quiet. Sunday mornings.
I was at church this morning.
Yeah, the peace was broken only by people shoe heels walking down the road going to church. And you know, this is such a different country now. So I think that is particularly traumatic for Barbadians of our generation, and even Barbadians the ages of 35, 40, that we have not seen the likes of this kind of violence before. And not only to express sympathy for the relatives of the persons who have passed, but the what we call the collateral victims, the persons who heard it, who heard the gunshots this morning, those honest workers at the gas station who were possibly who must have been traumatized by the event. So let us express commiseration with all of them. This could have happened to any of us. I go to that gas station when I'm on my way to my laundry. So I felt it. Quite indirectly, but I did feel it. So let us express sympathy for them. Let us pause and consider the plight of people who are working on these front lines. We've seen a video just 2 days ago of 2 young ladies in another gas station. And these are people, young women, unarmed. All they have is their, feminine innocence. And you notice that at most of the gas stations are employing mainly women. And women are attacked because they're women, because they're perceived as the weaker sex physically. And let us pause and, consider their circumstances and commiserate and empathize and sympathize with people who are on these front lines, because there's obviously a wave now of armed robbery apart from the gang violence. And let us try to understand and appreciate the difficult circumstances in which people are working sometimes for subsistence wages. Let us pause and consider them. As to the question of gangs, GLYNE, look, I spent 2023 while I was on the government benches, 2024 while I was on the opposition bench, asking this government to pass anti-gang legislation. I'm going to do it again tonight, seizing the opportunity of this show to ask the government, to plead with the government, to beg the government to consider anti-gang legislation. As you have correctly said, GLYNE, your fascination with the mafia must lead you to the conclusion that we have a kind of mafia operation around here. I asked the government last year, when it became clear that young men were coming out after having been on bail for 2 murders and committing a 3rd one, I asked the government to pass a new bail act to make it almost impossible for young men who had committed murder to get bail a 2nd time. You know what the government did? The government came to Parliament and just extended the original 2001, I think, bail act. And it has more pages, but all it does is that, as I said before and I say again, it exports the responsibility for bail right back to the courts without making it more stringent at the level of Parliament. Parliament was cowardly last year. Parliament ought to have made it stricter. We are in a time of violent and rampant crime.
Question: when you say anti-gang legislation, explain to Barbadians what it is intended to do and how you anticipate it will address the situation, because we recognize that we have in other parts jurisdictions within the CARICOM region.
All right, I'll explain it as simply as I can. Now, Maxine, we're not going to address any specific case.
Yeah, that's fine. No, we can't do that. We can't.
If a man is shot tomorrow, God forbid, tomorrow morning in some village somewhere, the police will go looking for the man that shot him. All right, he will arrest him and charge him for murder, and that's it. The police got the man. But there can be the creative use of legislation to extend it to the person who may have given him the order.
Okay, exactly.
Yes, you see where I'm coming from.
Right, and that's what people need to understand.
That is what people need to understand, and that is why I've been calling for it. That all crime is not limited to the two actors. Crime is not limited in many cases to the deceased and the perpetrator. Crime goes often beyond the deceased and the perpetrator. That is the safest way for me personally to say it. But as a parliamentarian, I must have courage. And I must have the courage of my convictions. And my views must be guided by my knowledge of the law. And if this crime is continuing on the basis, or if this crime is continuing in a manner that places responsibility beyond the immediate perpetrator, the active perpetrator, GLYNE, then we must go beyond the active perpetrator. I think everybody in Barbados is following me. And that's why I think calling for anti-gang legislation. In other words, GLYNE, go to the gang. Go to the instructor. Go to the person who gave the order. Because it is a complex system that you and I don't understand. We are not a part of it. But trust me,
it is understood by somebody.
Beg your pardon, Maxine?
I say it's understood. Within the country, it is understood. We may not have, the average citizen, but that the reality.
And there's precedent for it. There's precedent for it. There are other Caribbean islands that have passed anti-gang legislation. So this is nothing new. But for some reason, in our little place here, there's a reluctance.
I think the reason I asked for the explanation was that we've heard the expression. When I say we, I think the general population, but people do not quite, some people did not quite understand what you meant. And I think that explanation certainly, and GLYNE, you can comment, certainly would help people to understand the rationale behind such legislation across the region.
Yes, and to repeat, Maxine, that there's precedent for it in the other countries of the
Precisely,
country. Right. Where the state, where the cabinet, where the parliament have realized that a lot of this crime is rooted in gang organizations. It is organized crime. You therefore go to the organization of that crime. You go beyond the specific incident of the perpetrator shooting the man. You go beyond him. Of course, you capture him, but you go beyond him and you go to the organization of that crime. And it is clear. It is clear. I mean, people in the old days used to take up a cutlass and run at somebody barefooted and kill him, do something to him and gone. That clearly was not any gang thing. But there's a certain sophistication that goes with it now. The fellas have cars without tint. They're doing it without tint on the cars. They have high-powered weapons, very expensive weapons.
You just need to listen to the videos with the bullet, the sound of bullets this morning. I mean, that's being circulated.
It is highly organized. There's money behind it. It is not any longer any poor man living below subsistence levels that is committing the crime. It is highly sophisticated highly organized. I wonder if we're not putting ourselves at risk by disclosing this, but somebody must have the courage. And GLYNE, you asked about gangs and organized crime. It is clear that this crime is being is highly organized, highly sophisticated, highly expensive, highly funded, well funded.
On other occasions, I have said repeatedly on this show that crime is the best organized business in the world.
There we
That's
are.
why nobody has been ever able to
There we are.
eradicate it. It must have fantastic organization that people can give instructions on all kind of illicit goods or even services can make their way through systems all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
And get coordinate the demand and provide a supply and meet the market demand. To me, it has to be well organized. And we always hear about the big man. But in this business, if you look at the mafia, for example, the big boss, the mafia boss, the chieftain is always well insulated.
That's the point.
And the rest of the world, people have had to often use tax laws or legal instruments to get at them, not through the actual.
That's how they got Al Capone.
Precisely, and it still happens today.
And you watch The Godfather. Did they ever get to Corleone, Michael Corleone? Michael Corleone used to have his children there being baptized in the church while people were being executed on the steps of the courthouse.
I want to respond to this issue here. Like the person is fractalesque, I guess. Ask why gangs exist in the first place. Anti-gang legislation only treating the symptoms, not the root cause. Let me say that, and I will comment and then I will let the others. My response to that is this. If we are talking about violence and so on, it has to be tackled with what I would call a multi-pronged approach at multiple stages. Any anti-gang legislation is talking about treating what might be the root cause of that particular kind of action, the committing of murders, etc. But we recognize, and I certainly believe we've had this kind of discussion, and we will get back to it and we can continue, and I would hear from Comrade Thorne what his thoughts are, that at the same time we are talking about seeking to engage in activity. If you listen to GLYNE at the beginning of the show when he talked about community, and GLYNE, that there are multiple approaches which seek, one, to address the crime as it is committed and address that. But we are looking at the whole issue of prevention by tackling problems before they arise. But over to you, gentlemen. First to Mr. Thorne. How do you respond to this comment? Ask why gangs exist in the first place.
Gangs exist because, as GLYNE said, it is like a business. Crime is a business. Crime, I mean, it is deviant, but it is a business. And the successful businesses are businesses that are highly organized. That's why gangs exist. If a chap is bringing in something and he's bringing it in for sale, he has to establish a whole organization, just like any other business. It just happens to be criminal. So that is why gangs exist. I think
the other question would be, why would people gravitate toward gangs, which speaks then to some other fundamental societal kinds of issues, I think, which is what the person may be looking at. In other words, how do we get to people before they get to the situation where they feel that they need to be part of something that is illegal to survive?
I'm going to trespass on GLYNE's area. And there are sociologists who will tell you that there are two basic schools of thought. The structuralist school, which is where people become involved in crime because of their social and economic circumstances. And then there's the behaviorist school. Their hearts incline them to it. So that a lot of people do get involved. Sometimes it is both, because there are rich people who are born rich who get involved in crime. So it is a combination. Sometimes it is not always the structuralist school, but it is the behaviorist as well. There's some people who might be fascinated by it and they find it exciting, perhaps. Why live the straight life? Why not live on the edge?
I am sure that MAXINE and you, Ralph, given your closeness to the church and religion, would admit that man's nature today if you read the Bible, it's the same as it was.
The heart of man,
then.
the heart of man is wicked.
Has not
Flourish like a
changed.
green bay tree.
So while you made a very important point, while we're talking about societal inputs and responsibilities in society, individuals have certain, whatever reasons, flaws in their personality that make them, and it extends. I made reference to a concept called in psychology called hybridophilia, where people are attracted to, excited about down to the point of sexual gratification, right?
Yes.
And this because we had Bonnie and Clyde.
You had the lady in California who got married to her captor.
That's right.
The newspaper man's daughter.
Yes.
Patty Hearst. Patty Hearst, right?
Yes.
That's right. Yes. So we would be misleading ourselves, we'd be naive to believe that some of those same impulses and values do not exist in the Barbadian society. I think it's instructive that I remember many years ago, in 1990 or so, there was a minister of justice who denied there were gangs in Barbados. So far, nobody has put him wrong. Until if you don't, it's like if you're a drug addict or an alcoholic, if you don't admit you're an alcoholic, how do you go about tackling it? How do you confront it? If you believe that just a little fella is lying in real harm, organized gangs have hierarchies, structures. You have levels of responsibility and benefits, right? And like you said, it's a business, and they operate to satisfy demands to make a profit. They carry on their business.
GLYNE, it has been romanticized too. Tracy Chapman sings a song, I think it's For My Lover, 3 weeks in a Virginia jail. And she is talking about her relationship with a man who keeps going to prison, but she loves him. So that crime is often romanticized. The criminal, the man on the run, there are women who will romanticize about that. They find him attractive. The bad boy syndrome, I think you wrote about that, GLYNE, the bad boy syndrome.
That's right.
There's a romantic, almost glamorous side to crime. And the fellow who's going in the church and singing in the choir, he wonders why the girl is not attracted to him. She likes to pull out the motorcycle, who's lifting the front wheel and doing all kinds of things. So there's a romantic aspect to this whole thing.
But you're talking romantic, but according to literature, it's even sexual.
Yes. Well,
it is
romantic,
sexual.
sexual.
It's sexual.
Yes,
and we know that sex is the most powerful force in the world, more powerful than nuclear weapons. Look at what it does to people's lives. Look at what it does to people's lives. Think about it.
That's an interesting. I must remember those words, GLYNE.
I didn't know you had that prowess.
Moving along.
I'm being intellectual and I'm academic here tonight. I'm not confessing to anything. I'm just describing.
Okay. I see.
But even one of our well-known, and it does all. It also, the same hybridophilia attaches to people in even that rightly said abusive relationships.
Yeah.
You wonder why does that person, and there's something about that figure that intrigues you, that fascinates you, that wounds you. Part of from what I've read to, part of the issue is that some women feel they can change a man. If I love him enough and give him enough, I can change him.
Really?
Yeah. And some of them go down that route with the idea they're going to change my life.
You know, I was told today, GLYNE, I mean, you're describing it now in a very sexist way, but there are women now who are involved in crime.
Of course.
Violent crime. So let us not treat it in a sexist way.
Right.
Yeah. I was told today that there are women, and I was told this evening actually, that there are women who are acting similarly within criminal organizations. Wow. I don't know, but that's what I'm told.
Well, you always heard of accomplices and that kind of thing, but
the Bonnie and Clyde
I would not be surprised. That's it. But I wonder, looking at this comment by Easy D, referring to the many factors why young adults join gangs, this whole notion of mentorship, etc. My question is, to what extent, and I want to bring it around now to education, because you probably recognize, Ralph, that as well, Glenn and I started touching on it, that in today's newspaper and on Friday, there were articles relating to the so-called initiatives for educational reform. And
Yes.
my concern is that
Sorry, Maxine.
sorry,
Transformation now. Is
sorry,
upgraded from reform.
the
You're being
transformation.
transformed. Right.
Okay, we're getting a lot of buzzword. We get deconstruct and reconstruct, reform, transformation, and I can throw in the midst of that a short word: chaos and confusion. This is a little longer word, but because my concern, and I look at this because we have rules which say that Barbadian children are supposed to go to school until 16. Yet we had last year several youngsters, and including, I believe, a 16-year-old charge, teenagers, not youngsters, teenagers specifically, including a 16-year-old charge for murder. And my concern is what is happening in our educational system, one, and if I then link it with something else, like Glenn said earlier, what is happening in our communities or our neighborhoods where there seems to be a diminishing of a community spirit that is pushing or causing or resulting our young men in particular and young women to get themselves involved in these kinds of activities, and what is, you see, because we're hearing all of this, and yet today we had an article which I had Janine put up earlier, where is transformation. They're talking about $100 million budget for this educational transformation, and in listening to reading all of this, and in a conversation I had with Glenn earlier, I was saying, look, we are talking about these things, and people are talking about monies and titles and areas of reform. But are we engaging in very basic terms in serious problem-solving efforts to understand what is happening
Maxine,
and therefore come up with solutions that make sense? Go ahead,
Maxine,
sir.
one Saturday afternoon, I'm going to take you canvassing with us. You learn so much. I'm going to introduce you to the harsh realities that visit the lives of a lot of young men in this country. I went into a certain neighborhood, I wouldn't say which one, and we learned that there are children, 11, 12, 13, they do not get breakfast and they do not go to school. And I asked, so where do they go? They go on the block. I said, why? Because they cook food there. Or if they don't cook food there, food is bought there. So that those young people become immediate recruits for the block, if you wish. And what drives them there? Not a heart that is filled with evil, but economic circumstances. You wake up and you don't get breakfast, you don't go to school. Maxine, I'm told that there are a lot of young people in this country who are not going to school because of economic circumstances.
And so right away, what you are saying is that when we start to diagnose, because now what that now translates into, because I saw an article where somebody was congratulating Barbados for being one of the top, what was it, 5-10 countries in the region in literacy or whatever. But yet you are coming across, because at the end of the day, a lot of these young people, they're not going to school. And I also will tell you that I've been told that with COVID,
yes,
a lot of children just stopped going to school. I mean, that might have precipitated what you described, might have precipitated that as well.
Maxine, a lot of adults start going to church too.
Well, that is
So
true.
it's a habit. It's a habit among adults and equally among children. You know that.
But at the end of
since COVID, a lot of adults are using COVID as an excuse for having stopped.
But the difference is, it's true. In fact, only last week, and this was mentioned at church, and I've heard it a couple of times in the last month or so, and that is true. But my worry is that here you have 11-year-olds who are expected in the system to be going to school until 16. Yes.
Yes.
And we are talking about an article in the newspaper, which I read an extract from earlier, where the ministry official is talking with $100 million to build capacity and a lot of buzzwords. And my question is, based on what you said, how many children can be fed in a manner that does not belittle that child or whatever, in a way that he or she can go to school and be able to focus on learning? In other words, my basic question is, are we, when I say we, the officials who are supposed to be making these diagnoses and coming up with recommendations, focusing on the right things, and therefore putting themselves in a position to allocate resources properly? I don't know. Over to you and to GLYNE.
Look, GLYNE, if you would permit me, and I don't want to remain within the domain of Parliament and me and my protestations, but I've spent the last year asking for the amounts allocated to the welfare department to be increased.
That's right.
And I've asked this government and I've asked this Prime Minister to tell the people of Barbados how much money belonging to Barbadians is spent every year, every month in travel, not only by her, but by all her ministers. And is this travel so important? What has it brought to Barbados? What it has done is that it has deprived a lot of children in Barbados from getting a meal when the mornings come. It has prevented the welfare department from having a bigger vote to support hungry young children in this country when their parents are trying to survive on subsistence wages. That is the reality in Barbados. So that when we see a 13 and a 14-year-old on the block, or when we see them trying to catch a fowl in the gas station to sell for $10 to give their mom the money, we must understand the root of all this, that it is not a bad heart, it is bad circumstances. And the government has to take responsibility. And the government has to tell the people of Barbados, I repeat, the government has to tell the people of Barbados, if the money that is spent in foreign travel by a prime minister who cannot find herself in this country, and when the budget time comes, if it comes before the election, I'm going to tell the people by then I hope to get the numbers. And I hope to force the government to say what is the number, what is the amount of money being spent on international travel, on private jets, to the disadvantage of children in Barbados. That is what is happening. I know people don't like to hear this, maybe an unpopular message, because when you speak for the poor, it's unpopular. There's some glamorous message out there that involves glamorous people, and it becomes a very popular message, highly sanitized, highly deodorized. Everybody likes to hear it. But when you start to talk about the plight of the poor and their descent into criminal conduct, it is nasty. Nobody wants to hear about it. Everybody wants to sweep it under the carpet. Oh, they just exist. Well, they're human beings like us. And we have a responsibility. And this government has a responsibility to ensure that these young people are not sliding into crime, into deviance, and into general moral decay. I'm going to say a lot about that another time. But that's the reality of Barbados. And GLYNE, why are we so afraid to deal with it? Why are we so afraid to confront it? When you and I were children, Barbados was poorer then than it is now. Why didn't we fall into crime? Yeah, why did we not?
Different socialization. But before we get back to crime, I was dealing with the question
social
of
protection too.
The consequence of crime. What has now emerged as a new social phenomenon? You're talking about glamorizing. We have now reached the stage, and it was particularly evident at last Christmas, where you glamorize and romanticize and sanitize poverty, deprivation, where people are no longer prepared to make donations, help the poor, help the needy. There must always be in the newspapers, on TV, where you're giving out things that no longer is it demeaning people or causing embarrassment. It has now become a new industry. I call it begging industry, where you are popularizing, glamorizing. You call it charity, and to me it's an extended there's a proposal by government that we will have to depend on philanthropy as a segment, as a sector of our economy.
Yes. Yes.
Philanthropy is only a glamorized word for begging, charity,
Precisely.
poverty. So this idea of making these things, what it does, decreases people's ability to think for themselves, that they have self-esteem, because it says that they resign to life, and some of them will go to the gangs because they all get money, make money. There's a more glamorous life, and so that they get it where they will, and not necessarily where they deserve to. So I think we have a lot of self-examining to do. And I want it. But before time gets, so if I might share again, change gears, Mr. Ralph.
Yes.
I have to ask. We got about 20 minutes more to go, or so much less than that.
Yeah, about 20 minutes. Yeah.
I have to ask you about. I have to change gears and go a little more political.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Because even in your presentation, you mentioned about the Democratic Party.
Yes.
How would you describe what state the DLP now is in since you became leader? Since you became leader, how do you describe this process, and what is the current status? Because I'm asking, I wish people talk about how settled are they? Are they as settled? I know you spoke or talked about last time we saw in the press a couple of weeks ago that when the elections are called, you'll have a first slate of candidates.
Yes.
So that represents work being done. So give us a status report then on the Democratic Labour Party as it is now as an institution since you found it.
I almost got here late because I was at a candidate selection committee meeting. And that is a process that is ongoing, GLYNE and MAXINE. It is competitive. And the fact that it is competitive means that there are several constituencies in which we have the difficult task of, as I told a group this evening, appointing and disappointing. One political scientist, whom I respect, said that the conference had been, or the culmination of the conference, and my speech had been a stabilization speech. And I think generally there has been stabilization within the party. Now, you are aware, GLYNE, as to party politics. It is not a Sunday school class. Politics involves rivalries, so that no party is ever entirely settled. So anybody who tries to make you believe that is really misleading you. And last week, the media spoke to me as to a party settling itself and stabilizing itself. Yes, I will say that the party has settled and stabilized itself, and that a lot of the perceived instability is created elsewhere. I wouldn't go into that now. But when people speak of instability within the Democratic Labour Party, I remind them that prime ministerial power is so great that instability may be stifled. Yes, I sat in a parliament, and when we were eulogizing Owen Arthur after his death, I attempted to get up and speak because I thought it was my turn. Up jumped another member of parliament who had recently been fired from his ministry and proceeded to chastise the prime minister. Nobody talks about that. There's a video on YouTube of Owen Arthur, your friend, as a member of parliament. He spent 13 minutes chastising the prime minister, and he was going upstairs in the same parliament with her. A few years later, she was eulogizing him in Spikestown. I can call names. There's several. John King. I say tonight, John King was hustled out of the lower house and put into the Senate. And he was fired as a minister. Today he's a consultant in the same ministry. Nobody speaks about that. Trevor Prescott was fired as a minister. He's not happy about it. Cynthia Ford ceased to be a minister and compensated with the office of Deputy Speaker of the House. I don't know that she complained, but I don't know that she's happy about it. She can come tomorrow and say that she's happy about it if she thinks it important so to do. So that the Barbados Labour Party has had its very disruptive moments. But Glenn Clark as well, Hinkson as well. Yeah, their dismissals from the cabinet have been disruptive periods within the party. But you don't hear the media speaking about that. Why not? Why
But
not?
with all due respect, Ralph,
And a prime minister, I'm gonna finish the sentence, Glenn. A prime minister's power is so great that disruption can be suppressed by the fact of prime ministerial power. Maria Agard was dismissed in a very public way. I remember the Sunday afternoon on Robert Street seeing it on television. I saw that. Did it say, did the analysts say, oh, the party is dying? No, they did not. They did not.
Like you said, I'm well aware of the intrigue, the backstabbing,
Yes,
the egos, the machination of politics. But I think
it never ends.
I know, because there are always egos and rivalries, and people got ambitions.
Look how Harris became the presidential candidate.
Okay,
They had to force Biden. That was public.
Let me bring it back.
Public.
Yeah,
he is president of the United States today, and his party forced him in a very public way to step down and gave the poor lady a very short time to campaign.
All right, I'd like to get your views on. I'd like to give your views on another aspect. Okay,
yes,
I've heard your declarations about the candidate's election, and you have an abundance of riches almost. Like, good for you.
I did not say that.
That's my words.
You can use your
my words. I mean, but what everybody talking. I think it's a good problem to have, so to speak. But on the other hand, what is happening? A party, especially on election day, has to be judged by the quality and the strength and the organization of its branches. They get the vote identified. What is the situation with the branches? Because right now, as an observer, I do not hear branch meetings and everybody speaking, etc. What is the status of the branches? Are the branches active? How many of them are active? Is there a program to reactivate? Because you will depend on them on election day and the candidates to deliver the vote.
I give you an honest answer. We're trying to reorganize and energize a few of our constituency branches. There has been a lull towards the end of the year in terms of branch meetings and so on, but those will be resumed shortly.
Okay.
GLYNE, I did not attend a meeting today because my water was off most of the afternoon, and I had to cook and prepare for this show. But I'm just assuring you that branch meetings happen, including the one in St. James South.
Good.
So you may not see them covered.
We're not hearing in the media, but they do happen.
But as a member, probably have to go by what I see or don't see it. That helps to form my opinion. But
that is when you become a victim to the media.
Well,
sometimes you have to speak the truth beyond the media, GLYNE.
That's what I'm seeking to do now by asking this question. you see, but there's one last thing. Again, I'm familiar with how parties run. I have been in one of them for many years and worked with them and within them. What is I understand the rumor has it. As a Latin man, Farmer S has it that had to show us that for MAXINE, called MAXINE, like she didn't do Latin at school.
That's 1 year, 2 years.
All right, but that your administration has been weakened functionally, equipment-wise, record-wise, by the departure of certain personalities, and that therefore has inhibited your ability to get your get the pipe back on full strength as much as you would want to. What is the truth on that?
From this place where I speak, we have held how many press conferences we held from here? No? We've held several press conferences from here, GLYNE. We have held the LPTV 7. All right, Derek is telling me 7. We've held how many sessions of the LPTV every Tuesday night from 7 to 9. The truth is, we did suffer the loss of some of our equipment, but we didn't have a horse, and we've been riding a very good cow. And our technology, it will return. Look, we don't want to go into the public domain fighting over a camera and so on. That's beneath us. But we're getting by. We're getting by. Okay. We've held 7 press conferences in this room. I really shouldn't let the public know where I am now. late hour
But,
of the
but,
night.
but I've watched, I think I've watched all of them myself. And some of them
And,
very
and let me
informed.
tell you, it is difficult to beat the quality. We don't worry about technology when we have human beings of high quality. I mean, you saw the people on that panel on Tuesday night. We had 2 medical doctors. We had Senator Andrea World displaying a high quality of leadership. The absence of a camera does not diminish the quality of the human beings
Yeah.
that we have in this party.
Yeah, but that apart, it has to have impact on the functioning, the life, the culture, the active of George Street. Your office cannot be a functional replacement for George Street. George Street have its own activities, its own persona, its own. So I think that is what I am asking about too.
You have just put in an application for our political advisor, and you're asking.
No. I've done my part in that regard already.
But you're right. You're right. We accept your advice. As a good Christian, we accept your advice.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Over to you, Maxine.
things are good. Things are good. Morale is high, I think. We will have look, when you're selecting candidates, some people will be disappointed. But they all recognize that we're going forward united.
Okay.
United. Because the people in Barbados are not happy with this government. And we would be very foolish not to be united. Yeah, we would be very foolish not to be. We're a political party, and we know what is our mission. We know what is our purpose. We know what is our goal. We know what we have to do. And trust me, Glyne, we are going to do it. We have several spokespersons. Every week they're in the media. I hear people saying they're not in the media. I don't know what media they're hearing or listening to. But our spokespersons are in the media. Miss Dujon, Miss Amoy Gildenborn. They have been in the media.
Okay.
Go ahead, Maxine.
Guy, are you comfortable? Anything? I
Yeah,
will
no,
not pursue the interrogation on, because they may tell me that I am using the show to promote the Democratic Labour Party. So I leave that.
Don't forget. I spent a lot of my years as thinking like a journalist. So I always listen as a journalist.
Yeah, but no, but I am fine. But
evaluating.
I'm saying that on the particular topic, I left it up squarely up to you.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I understand that.
We have about 12 minutes, and I would want to ask Comrade Ralph,
Yes,
the leader of the opposition, and as in the context of the last bit of exchanges, the political leader of the Democratic Labour Party, are there any, because we have not reached the end of the second week of the first month of the year. We've talked about crime. We have seen the continuing disaster, the ministry, as it relates to education. You've touched on the challenges that our children have. What for you might be something else of major concern as you function as leader of the opposition and political leader of the DLP? What are some of the other pressing issues, at least one other one that you may want to start to talk about in the remaining time we have as we prepare to wrap up at 10?
Well, I've argued, I mean, we dealt with crime. I've argued that crime, the problem of violent crime now is the biggest crisis we've had since independence in this country. But so I wouldn't want to go back to that. Another concern I have, apart from crime, is the drift and the hopelessness that is characterizing the lives of young people. Maxine, I have friends who have children who are in their teens, and I poll them and I ask them, so what does your son, what does your daughter want to do? Age 14, 15, 16. And 70-80% of them are telling me the children want to leave this country. And that is another crisis. So apart from the crisis of crime, is the crisis of the flight of our aspirational young people out of this country. That is a very, very serious problem. We've been discussing the problem of NIS and the failure of the NIS scheme to support older people in this country. And that will be exacerbated if our aspirational young people leave this country, because they're not going to be around here to boost the NIS scheme. And it is the drift, it is the hopelessness that is afflicting and confronting the lives of young people. That is something about which I am deeply concerned. apart from the ones who are not going to school, the ones who are going to school, the aspirational ones who are going to school, want to leave Barbados. That is a deep crisis. How is the government responding? How is the government responding? The government is focusing on revelry. And that's something we've said over and over, that revelry seems to be the antidote to every social problem now in Barbados. Well, not we gathering, scattering, they say. You say that you're going to have a football competition to transform the lives of young people. And what is it? It becomes a transaction. Government says the winning team gets what, $100,000? Look how it ended. You know, right now up on the screen you have, oh, that's not on the screen yet. I'm sorry. Government's response is always to enter into a transaction. Government believes that money and entertainment and revelry and the materialist disposition towards life will solve problems. And it will not. Government has an approach to life and to the problems of the lives of young people that always involves money. And that is not the solution. Those young men who played the football ought to have been playing that football genuinely for love of their community. They were playing it for the love of money. At the top of the poster, I said this here before the press conference, at the top of the poster was a dollar sign, $2 million, I think they said. That is wrong. And I said then, and I'll say it again, the football competition that the government organized is going to place pressure on the Barbados Football Association, because you're asking those same young men who were motivated by a desire to make $100,000 and to get $75 per match. You're asking them now to play entirely for free. You're asking them to play entirely for the love of their community, for the love of a community life that is sliding, that is disappearing in Barbados. So the government has put pressure. The government has created a problem for the Barbados Football Association. The government has created an entire social problem by focusing on the pursuit of material goods. That is what this government is doing. Nobody's talking to them. And I feel strongly about this because you see somebody doing so wrong. So wrong. You see a government doing so wrong with the lives of young people in this country, and nobody's stopping them. Nobody is stopping them. You see, everything that this government does involves a transaction. I drove through Parish Land yesterday on my way home, and Parish Land community, no football, no cricket, no basketball, and the field is fenced around. And I looked at it, it looked as if a bomb had been dropped out there. The field is white. So I said, well, perhaps they're putting sand on it so that the grass would grow quickly. I spoke to some people from Parish Land this evening, and they told me, no, that is rubble that was just placed on the field. So Parish Land, that used to have, I played second division cricket against Parish Land at Parish Land. Didn't make a lot of runs up there, but that's another story. But that field has been destroyed, and they want to call that GLYNE and MAXINE a mini stadium. You know why they want to call it a mini stadium? Because they put a fence around it.
The fence of the young people. I
don't know if you've ever seen it, MAXINE. You definitely have not ever seen it, because I don't know what you would be doing up there. But they have fenced around a field in the middle of the community, a field that is already fenced around by people who live around the field. You don't get a more organic connection between a community and its sporting locale.
So you shut out the people. It's
a fence. It's a literal fence around the field, so that I used to be able to drive by if a cricket game is playing. I walk on to the almond tree and watch some cricket. You can't do that now. And this government has destroyed community life in this country. The
question is, who's supplying the fencing? Who making money off the fencing?
Whose idea it was to do that, to sell
some
fencing is right.
That is the point. Somebody made a lot of money off that expensive fence. Somebody made a lot of money off that expensive fence. I'm driving down Highway 7 the other morning, and I see an electronic board advertising we Gatherin. An electronic board. You know somebody's making a lot of money off that.
Of course.
Somebody owns that electronic board. Somebody imported that electronic board. Somebody knew that Gatherin wanted an electronic board to advertise Gatherin.
Or created the need for one, because I don't know that you need to advertise that in that
There
way.
is a transaction behind every government policy in this country. There is a transaction. Every initiative that government takes, there's a transaction involved. There's a financial transaction. Who is benefiting? Tell the young people in this country who are the beneficiaries of all these transactions.
And from my, this is the worst I've seen it.
The
Government
worst.
has had their patronage, but I know there are people now who have been with certain personalities since 1994, have grown with them, have established, have gotten jobs, have gotten contracts, in the media, in photography, in printing, in designing, and they're all their names, and it's just like some of the entertainments. Wherever there's a government fund, certain select few will get the prize.
Yes.
You call them shareholders.
Yes.
And that is happening now again. And that's happening now with Gatherin.
Congratulations for the Spirit of the Nation show. Something that young people voluntarily took part in with pride, representing their parish. Yeah, I think you were the father of that, weren't you?
Yeah, that's my idea. Yeah. 30 years this year. Not too many people have done things.
Still going.
It's still going strong.
Still going. Right. Yes.
As a pilot, two of the ministers in government passed through that program as parish ambassadors, Chad Blackman and also Minister Lane. They are products. We didn't court them politically. We had them developed as persons, so therefore we're not responsible for the political performance.
When you're making a disclaimer.
That's not my question.
I'm being told that you will permit me to advertise our activities for Arrowbarrow Day.
They are there. So
they're
go ahead.
On the screen.
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Our Memorial Church service is on Wednesday, on
Sunday.
Next Sunday, is it?
Sunday, January the 19th.
And that's Messiah Wesleyan Holiness Church in Messiah Street, St. John.
Monday, Jan 20th, the Arrowbarrow Memorial Lecture, the Honorable Rav Tom Casey, MP.
Yes.
And this will be at the Arrow Walton Barrow Center for Creative Imagination, 7 p.m.
Yes.
And on Tuesday, January the 21st at 1 p.m. at Crab Hill, St. Lucie North Stars Cultural and Social Club will be the Arrowbarrow EWB T20 cricket match.
Yes. North Stars in St. Lucie.
St. Lucie, Crab Hill.
Yes, we are going to be gathering down there.
Before you, even without hearing that program, I think it was yesterday, it occurred to me, that Arrowbarrow as a father of independence, I feel that the government, the taxpayers should help finance a proper celebration of Arrowbarrow Day through them. I feel the government tax should give a certain sum of money to the DLP.
Yes.
They help finance their proper these picnics, and they're too minuscule. It does not deal with the majesty of the achievement of them. I think we should pay for that.
Yes.
And you say, and give it some meaning.
The sin in regathering, and government wants to know why the people are not inclining themselves towards regathering, because the people in Barbados understand that regathering is a partisan event. It's a BLP event being funded by taxpayers' money. And the government needs to be told that. The government needs to understand that. And if the people in Barbados are now reluctant to support regathering, it is because they now know that it is a Barbados Labour Party event intended to lead up to elections, except that it is being financed by the people, by the taxpayers of this country. Yeah. So I agree with you. Yes, if government is so magnanimous and gracious as to fund our Arrowbarrow activities, we'll accept. But they're not.
Estimates are being prepared now. That is why MAXINE, you'll see that notice going out. That WhatsApp about people being summoned to come home.
Oh, right.
That is the preparation for I checked it out. That's preparation for the estimates process.
For the estimates. Okay.
Yeah, but I'm saying that should be done because it doesn't seem as though we get any celebration for Republic Day. So you might as well put the money behind Arrowbarrow's independence, which is an established achievement in Barbados. So I think so. I thought about yesterday. Say no something. Give them some money, let them do a proper celebration that does justice to the memory and stature and contribution of Arrowbarrow.
GLYNE, you have the job now. political advisor and consultant to the Democratic
No,
Labour
no.
Party.
Oh Lord
Let
have
him arise
mercy.
tomorrow.
You can get
Oh, Lord.
Glenn in trouble.
Oh,
Anyhow,
Lord have mercy.
gentlemen,
Can't
I
say,
think,
Maxine.
I think,
Listen, ideas run the world, Ralph, and I'm still full of ideas.
and there's no dearth of ideas coming from Glenn. We are at 10 o'clock, so I will ask Mr. Thorne if there's any last comment you want to make before I ask Glenn to do the same when we wrap up the show for the evening.
Yes, just to say thanks. Just to say thanks for the opportunity to spread the word of the Democratic Labour Party. Just to say thanks to Miss Weeks and Dave and Marcia. Wish them a happy holiday wherever they are.
Kenya.
And yes. And to say thanks to you and GLYNE for carrying this show. This show has done so much for democratic expression and the institution, the real institution of political democracy in Barbados. This show, if it were not for this show, a lot of people in Barbados would not have heard voice and they would not have heard expressions genuinely in the defense of people. That's my parting word, to say thanks to you and congratulations to you and GLYNE and Dave and Marcia and Janine and Shakwani and all the other persons who come to this show religiously, and those who watch it, and those who give commentary. Thanks very, very much, Maxine and GLYNE.
Okay, over to you, GLYNE.
Thank you, Ralph, for being so generous with your time and your comments. You were very forthcoming, very pressed even on sensitive party issues and partisan issues. And I think it does a credit to yourself and to the organization by being so forthcoming. I just like to first say I look forward to when the first government minister will come on the show. I'm looking forward to one coming, one's days fairly soon to show, because we are open, but I want to see one who will be bold enough to come and say, I want to be on that show. I hope to stop.
Maybe a DLP minister.
On that note, I want to say thank you very much, Join Pamela Edwards and all of those who thank Mr. Thorne for coming on. I want to thank GLYNE. I know that Marcia was insisting, and she was insistent that the show continues in their absence. I mean, one suggestion was that we could pause, but she said no. And I can tell you that where she has moved outside of Nairobi and so on, she stayed in touch whenever she has access to the internet. I know they were planning to move out to a part of the country where she might not have internet readily. But we look forward to her coverage. And I want to thank over 1,000 members of the loyal opposition who joined this evening. I think at last count it was like 1,046. And I believe that number would, and Easy Day, thank you, and Esther Blue and everybody. I think it's important. Hopefully we would want perhaps to see and hear about the labor situation. I am following the comments of contractors who are talking about the work situation. As much as there appears to be a building boom in the making, the headline says building gloom, and that's a topic that we would hopefully engage you again, Mr. Thorne.
Yes.
So GLYNE, thank you very much. I really
pleasure.
enjoy working with you, and we did
Same
it.
here.
And to Janine, our producer and technical guru, as you said, she's the one who keeps it going.
Yes.
And I think you're correct. Everywhere I go, and whether it's supermarket, car parks, or whatever, people comment on the value of this show, the information that they get. Some people argue they would not understand several issues outside of the show. So thank everybody.
You're welcome.
Blessings.
Welcome.
Goodbye.
And
Same to you.
Bye.
We will stay in touch, everybody.
Thank you.
Look forward to hearing
Good
an update from Marcia maybe tomorrow during the day. Thank you.
Take care.
Blessings.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.